Emma Walker, the dependable sister, pours her heart and $60,000 into her sister Olivia's dream wedding, expecting nothing but inclusion. Yet, at the lavish Pinerest Estate, she's humiliated, relegated to table 27 in the kitchen, hidden from the celebration. Stung by betrayal, Emma's hurt crystallizes into resolve. Confronting her family's disregard, she walks out, reconnecting with her old flame, Daniel. As whispers of her sacrifice ripple through the stunned guests, Emma's bold stand sparks a reckoning. Will her family finally see her worth? Or has she flipped the table on their bond for good? Loved Emma's story? Subscribe now for more heartfelt tales that hit close to home. Share where you're tuning in from, and don't miss tomorrow's special story. Your support keeps these narratives alive. Join our community and let's keep the conversation going. Click that button and stay connected. The escort card in my hand felt like a blade, its elegant calligraphy taunting me with every curve of ink. My name, Emma Walker, was scrawled across it, assigning me to table 27 in the kitchen. I stood there, surrounded by the buzz of wedding guests in their glittering gowns and tailored suits, each clutching their own cards and chattering about their prime spots near the head table. My fingers quivered as I flipped the card over, half convinced there'd be some correction, some apology for the error. But no, there it was, unmistakable. My name, my place, tucked away in the shadows of the celebration I'd poured my entire being into for the past year. My heart, my soul, my savings. None of it had been enough to earn me a seat in the light. The sting of it cut deeper than I could have imagined, a raw ache that settled in my chest as I realized the whispers I dismissed for years were true. To my sister Olivia, I was a footnote, a reliable tool to be used and then set aside. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the steady one, the anchor of our family while Olivia danced through life, chasing fleeting passions, fleeting men, fleeting dreams. I stayed rooted in Seattle, the dependable daughter who never strayed, while everyone else seemed to drift away. Emma, you just get things done, my mother would say, her words landing like a half-hearted pat on the back. It wasn't praise, it was an assumption, as if my reliability was all that defined me. Useful, yes, but forgettable. When Olivia announced her engagement to Nathan after just 8 months, I felt a genuine warmth in my heart. Nathan was steady, kind, and seemed to cherish my free-spirited sister in a way that felt grounding. Their whirlwind romance had caught us all off guard, but it had a certain magic to it, a spark that felt destined. I was thrilled for her, truly. But then came the vision for her wedding, a lavish spectacle at Pinerest Estate, with a champagne tower cascading like a waterfall, floral arrangements crafted like works of art, and a guest list that could fill a theater. It's going to be perfect, Olivia had declared at our family's Sunday dinner, her engagement ring flashing under the chandelier as she painted her dream in vivid detail. The ceremony would unfold against the backdrop of the Cascade Mountains. Dinner would be served in the grand ballroom, and the night would end with dancing under a canopy of stars on the terrace. I'd smiled, caught up in her joy, my heart swelling at the thought of her happiness. But then my father's voice cut through the glow, his wineglass swirling thoughtfully in his hand. "Pinerest costs a fortune," he said, his tone heavy with practicality. "Your mother and I can contribute, but it won't cover much." Olivia's face crumpled, her light dimming, and I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the one that always surfaced when my sister's dreams teetered on the edge of collapse. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, the words spilled out. "I can help." The room went still. Every pair of eyes turned to me, a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Emma, that's sweet," my mother said, her voice laced with doubt, as if I were offering pocket change for a palace. "But we're talking tens of thousands of dollars." What they didn't know, what I'd kept quiet, was that my little website business had grown into a thriving digital marketing agency. While they still saw it as a quirky hobby, I'd built something real, something that could, in fact, carry the weight of Olivia's dream wedding. "I know," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I can help significantly." The shock on their faces was almost worth the fortune I was about to spend, and spend I did. Over the next 12 months, I wrote check after check, each one a quiet sacrifice. The venue deposit, the caterer's fees, the photographer's contract, the florist's intricate designs. I covered it all. Each payment came with the unspoken agreement that this was my gift to Olivia, a secret I didn't need broadcasted. She would have her perfect day, and my parents wouldn't have to drain their retirement savings. "You're too generous," my best friend Megan said one night, her brow furrowed as she watched me pore over vendor contracts at my kitchen table. "Does Olivia even know how much you're giving?" I'd shrugged, signing another check with a steady hand. "It doesn't matter. She's my sister. I want her to have this." That was my first mistake, assuming my generosity would be met with gratitude, that my sacrifice would earn me a place in her heart. The wedding weekend arrived under a sky so clear it seemed to bless the occasion. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn gold and crimson against the rugged peaks of the Cascade Mountains. I pulled into Pinerest Estate early, my car packed with emergency supplies, fashion tape, extra hairpins, stain remover, backup makeup, a small sewing kit. Always prepared. That was Emma Walker. The estate was breathtaking, more stunning than I'd remembered from our planning visits. Stone pathways wound through gardens manicured to perfection. In the main building, a restored 19th century mansion glowed in the morning sunlight. Inside, the staff buzzed with purpose, transforming the ballroom into a scene from a fairy tale. I found Olivia in the bridal suite, surrounded by her college friends, a whirlwind of laughter and champagne flutes. Not her bridesmaids. I wasn't one of those either. That rejection had stung, a quiet wound I'd buried deep. "It'd be weird to have my older sister as a bridesmaid," Olivia had said, her tone light but cutting. "Besides, you'll be too busy making sure everything goes perfectly, right?" Right, always right. When she saw me, her face lit up, but not with warmth or gratitude. "Emma, thank God you're here," she exclaimed, her silk robe slipping slightly as she gestured wildly. "The florist delivered the wrong shade of peonies, and Mom's losing it. No, I'm so happy to see you. No, thank you for making this possible." Just another crisis for dependable Emma to fix. And fix it I did. For the next 6 hours, I was a whirlwind of my own, darting between vendors, soothing my mother's frayed nerves, ensuring every detail was flawless. I barely had time to slip into my sage green dress, changing in a spare bathroom rather than the bridal suite, where my presence might have felt like an intrusion. The ceremony was perfect, a moment frozen in time. As Olivia glided down the aisle on our father's arm, her custom gown, paid for by me, shimmering in the soft light, I felt a wave of joy. My sister, radiant, marrying a man who loved her, surrounded by beauty I'd helped create. In that moment, every dollar I'd spent felt worth it. But the reception cracked that illusion wide open. I followed the crowd into the grand ballroom, where escort cards were arranged on a table adorned with those hard-won peonies. I waited in line, making small talk with distant cousins and Olivia's college friends, my heart still buoyed by the ceremony's glow. When I reached the front, Sophia, the wedding planner, hesitated as she saw me. "Oh, Emma," she said, her polished smile faltering. "Let me find yours." She rifled through the cards, her unease palpable, before pulling one from the very end. "Here you are," she said, avoiding my gaze as she handed it over. "Table 27, I said, frowning as I glanced at the table map nearby. There were only 25 tables in the ballroom. "There must be a mistake," I said, keeping my voice light despite the tightening in my chest. "I don't see table 27 on the map." Sophia's composure slipped further. It's actually in the adjacent room," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The kitchen annex. The kitchen. They'd seated me in the kitchen. For a moment, I couldn't move, the card burning in my hand. Around me, guests laughed and exclaimed over their coveted spots near the head table, oblivious to the quiet devastation unfolding in my heart. "There has to be a mistake," I said again, more to myself than to Sophia. She looked at me with genuine pity now. "I'm so sorry, Emma. The seating chart came directly from Olivia and your mother. I assumed you knew. But I hadn't known. I hadn't known that my contribution, nearly $60,000, more than half the cost of this entire wedding, had earned me a seat in the shadows, alongside vendors and distant relatives no one wanted to acknowledge. The weight of it hit me all at once. A lifetime of being the reliable one, the one who gave and gave without expecting anything in return. It crystallized into a single searing thought. Enough. I tucked the escort card into my clutch and made my way to the bar, my steps steady but my heart in chaos. "Champagne, please," I told the bartender, who offered a sympathetic smile, as if he could see the fracture in my composure. I sipped the champagne, chosen and paid for by me, and surveyed the room. The tables were set with fine china and crystal, the centerpieces glowing under the chandeliers. It was perfect, every detail a testament to my sacrifice. But as I stood there, glass in hand, I felt something new stirring inside me. A resolve, a refusal to be invisible any longer. The ballroom shimmered under the glow of chandeliers, their light dancing across intricate arrangements of garden roses and peonies, cascading in multi-tiered displays that seemed to capture every ounce of elegance. At the head of the room stood a grand table, adorned for Olivia and Nathan, the newlyweds, surrounded by their closest friends and wedding party. Nearby, table 1 was reserved for the parents, my mother and father, alongside Nathan's family and his siblings, all basking in the glow of the celebration. But I, Emma, the sister of the bride, the one who had poured her heart and soul into making this day flawless, was nowhere near them. My place was not among the honored guests, not even in the same room. Across the ballroom, I caught sight of my mother, her head tilted graciously as she accepted compliments on the wedding's perfection, as though she had single-handedly crafted every detail. My father stood beside her, his chest swollen with pride, his eyes never once searching for me. The sting of their indifference burned deep, a familiar ache I'd carried for years but had never allowed myself to fully feel until now. I had orchestrated this day, every flower, every note of music, every gleam of crystal, yet I was invisible to them, a shadow in their spotlight. My phone buzzed in my clutch, pulling me from the spiral of my thoughts. A text from Megan, my oldest friend, glowed on the screen. "How's it going? Is everything as perfect as you made it?" I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, unsure how to answer. How could I put into words the weight of being sidelined, of being deemed unworthy of a seat among my own family? How could I explain that after all I'd given, I'd been banished to the kitchen, hidden away like an afterthought? The hurt coiled tighter in my chest, a mix of betrayal and exhaustion, and I couldn't find the words to reply. Before I could decide, a voice broke through the hum of the crowd behind me. "Emma, is that you?" I turned, and there he was, Daniel Harrison, my college boyfriend, standing before me as striking as ever. The years had been kind to him, adding just a touch of silver at his temples that only made him more distinguished. His crooked smile, the one that used to send my heart racing, was as warm as I remembered. "Daniel," I said, my voice catching with genuine surprise, "I had no idea you were invited." He grinned, that familiar spark in his eyes. "Small world, right? I work with Nathan. Didn't realize the bride was your sister until I saw the program." For a moment, the weight of my hurt lifted, swept away by the unexpected comfort of seeing him again. Daniel and I had been serious once, weaving dreams of a shared future, plotting adventures and ambitions before life's currents pulled us apart. Our breakup had been mutual, but the pain had lingered, a rare kind of loss, not born of conflict, but of timing that refused to align. "It's really good to see you," I said, meaning every word. "How have you been?" As Daniel filled me in on the last decade of his life, his career, his travels, the small joys and setbacks, I felt myself relax for the first time that day. Here was someone who saw me, who asked about my life with genuine curiosity, free of agendas or expectations. We slipped into easy conversation, laughter bubbling up as we traded stories, and for a brief moment I forgot the sting of my family's dismissal. But then the call came for guests to take their seats for dinner, and reality crashed back. "I'm at table 12, Daniel said, glancing at his escort card. "Where are you?" I hesitated, a wave of embarrassment washing over me. My throat tightened as I searched for a way to answer without revealing the depth of my humiliation. "Actually," I said, forcing my voice to stay even, "I've been placed at a special table." His brow furrowed, his eyes searching mine. "Special how? You're the sister of the bride." I let out a small hollow laugh. "Special as in the kitchen," I admitted, the words tasting bitter. Apparently, family ties only get you so far. Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to concern, his jaw tightening. The kitchen? That can't be right. Oh, it's right, I said, finding a strange strength in his outrage on my behalf. A deliberate choice, in fact. He shook his head, disbelief etched into his features. I don't even know what to say. Want me to cause a scene? I'm pretty good at making a dignified fuss. His offer, half serious, brought a genuine smile to my face, the first in hours. Tempting it, I said, but I need to handle this my way. He squeezed my arm gently, his touch warm and grounding. Whatever you decide, I'm on your side. Find me later. I nodded, watching as he walked toward his table, a small spark of comfort flickering in the knowledge that at least one person in this room saw my worth. As guests settled into their seats and servers began pouring wine, I made my way toward the kitchen, my escort card clutched in my hand like a verdict. With each step, my resolve hardened. I had spent my life being the good daughter, the supportive sister, the one who never asked for anything in return. I had given endlessly, time, money, love, expecting only the bare minimum, respect, acknowledgement, a place at the table. But even that had been too much to ask. The kitchen was a whirlwind of activity, servers arranging salad plates, chefs perfecting the main course, bartenders restocking champagne trays. In one corner, tucked away in an annex where staff usually took breaks, stood table 27. Just as my sister's friend Sophia had warned, it was set for 4. 3 older guests, distant relatives of Nathan's, sat there already, their faces etched with mild confusion and discomfort. The 4th chair, empty and waiting, was meant for me. Emma Walker, sister of the bride, financier of dreams, now relegated to dine amid the clatter of dishes and the shouts of service. I approached the table, offering a polite smile to the others, but I didn't sit. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked straight back out, the confident click of my shoes against the marble floor echoing like a declaration. No, I would not accept this. For once, I wasn't going to smooth things over, to make it easier for everyone else at my own expense. The string quartet played softly as I re-entered the ballroom, the hum of conversation filling the air. I spotted Olivia and Nathan at the head table, laughing with their friends, carefree and radiant. My parents at table 1 were accepting more compliments from Nathan's family, their faces glowing with pride. Taking a deep breath, I walked directly to the head table. Olivia noticed me first, her smile faltering slightly. Emma, she said, her voice tinged with unease. Is something wrong with the kitchen? Do we need to talk to the catering manager? Her words confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd known all along where I was seated. The betrayal sliced through me, sharp and cold. Nothing's wrong with the kitchen, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. But I'm not sitting there. Olivia's eyes widened and she glanced at our mother, who was now watching with barely concealed alarm. Emma, please, Olivia whispered, her voice pleading. It's my wedding day. We had to make some tough decisions with the seating. Tough decisions, I repeated, cutting her off. The anger I'd buried for years surged to the surface, steady but undeniable. Like deciding your only sister, the person who paid for more than half of this wedding, should sit in the kitchen? A hush fell over the head table. Nathan's face registered shock, his eyes darting between me and Olivia. What do you mean paid for half the wedding? He asked, his voice low. I thought your parents covered what we couldn't. Olivia's face drained of color, her hands twisting in her lap. Emma, this isn't the time or place, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. When is the time, Olivia? I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. After I eat in the kitchen? After I watch everyone celebrate in the venue I secured? After I go home, knowing I wasn't even worth a mention in your speech? Tears pricked at my eyes, not of sadness but of fury, a lifetime of being overlooked, spilling over. My mother appeared at my side, her grip on my elbow tight and urgent. Emma, you're making a scene, she hissed. Let's talk about this later. I pulled my arm away, standing taller. I've waited for later my whole life, Mom. Later when Olivia doesn't need all the attention. Later when my efforts might actually matter to you. Later when I might be treated like part of this family instead of an ATM with feelings. The string quartet had stopped, the room now silent save for the faint clink of glasses. Guests nearby pretended not to listen, but their eyes betrayed them. Nathan's voice cut through the tension, his gaze fixed on Olivia. What exactly is she saying? His confusion had hardened into something sharper, a demand for truth. I hadn't planned this moment, hadn't intended to lay bare my pain so publicly. When I'd written those checks, $60,000 for the venue, the flowers, the photographer, the band, the champagne, I'd done so out of love, with no thought of recognition. But being hidden away, treated as though I were a shameful secret, had broken something in me. I'm saying, I said, my voice clear and resonant, that I paid for the venue, I paid for the flowers, the photographer, the band, the champagne, everyone's drinking. $60,000 to be exact. Each gas rippled through the nearby tables, the pretense of disinterest crumbling. And in return, I continued, I was seated in the staff annex because apparently that's what I'm worth to all of you. Olivia's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. Emma, I didn't know it was that much, she said, her voice breaking. Mom and Dad said you were helping with some smaller details. I turned to my parents, who stood frozen, their faces a mix of shame and discomfort. Is that what you told her? I asked, my voice cutting. That my contribution was minor? My father cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. We didn't think it was necessary to get into specifics. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course not, because if Olivia knew, she might have felt obligated to treat me like family. The sting of being perpetually overlooked, of pouring my heart into my family's needs while being treated as a mere convenience, bore down on me with crushing force. For years, I had swallowed the pain of being sidelined, my worth measured only by what I could offer. Money, time, solutions, never by who I was. Standing there amidst the clinking glasses and forced smiles of my sister Olivia's wedding, it hit me. This wasn't just about a seat at a table. It was about carving out a space in a family that had long ago decided I was secondary, useful but never essential. My chest tightened with the weight of it, a mix of grief and fury swelling as I realized I was fighting for something deeper. Validation, respect, a place where I wasn't just the dependable one in the shadows. Emma, Nathan said, his voice soft as he stood, his face etched with genuine worry. The concern in his eyes caught me off guard, stirring a flicker of hope that someone might finally see me. I had no idea you felt this way. His words, meant to soothe, only fanned the flames of my frustration. If you had known, what then? I asked, my tone steady but sharp, not cruel but pleading for an answer that mattered. Would you have fought for me to be treated with basic respect? Because that, Nathan, shouldn't require your permission. It should be the least I'm given. Across the table, Olivia's face crumpled, tears carving dark streaks through her mascara. Her sobs were quiet but piercing, each one a silent accusation. I thought you helped because you wanted to, she choked out, her voice trembling with hurt and confusion. Not because you expected something in return. Her words landed like a slap, raw and unexpected, knocking the air from my lungs. Expected something in return? The phrase echoed in my mind, twisting my pain into disbelief. Olivia, I said, my voice cracking under the weight of incredulity. I never expected anything. Nothing except to be seen as your sister. Not some hired hand to be tucked away in the kitchen like an embarrassment on the day I poured my soul into creating for you. Is that really too much to ask? The silence that followed was suffocating, a heavy curtain falling over the room. Guests shifted in their seats, their discomfort palpable, their whispers a low hum as they witnessed the unraveling of a family's carefully guarded facade. My mother's voice broke through, desperate and familiar. Emma, please, she said, her tone laced with the same pleading I'd heard my entire childhood. You're ruining Olivia's special day. There it was again, the unspoken rule etched into my earliest memories. Don't overshadow your sister. Don't disrupt her happiness. Don't demand attention. I turned to my mother, really seeing her for the first time, her face a map of denial and expectation. The hurt in her eyes mirrored my own, but it was her refusal to acknowledge my pain that cut deepest. "No, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You all ruined it when you decided I wasn't worth a seat in the same room as the rest of you." I faced Olivia and Nathan again, my heart aching but resolute. "I want you both to be happy," I said, meaning every word despite the bitterness coating my tongue. "I hope your marriage is everything you've dreamed of, but I'm done being the family's bank account, the one who gives and gives while staying invisible. I'm done sitting in the kitchen, pretending it's okay." With that, I turned, my head held high, ignoring the murmurs that trailed me like a wake. As I passed table 12, Daniel stood, his eyes asking a question he didn't need to voice. Without a second thought, I extended my hand. "Want to get out of here?" I asked, my voice lighter than I felt. His smile, warm and unwavering, was all the answer I needed. As we stepped out of Pinerest Estate, the weight of years, of always being the responsible one, of giving without receiving, began to lift, like a fog dissipating in the crisp Seattle night air. Behind us, the wedding's twinkling lights glowed, a distant reminder of a world I'd just walked away from. The freedom was dizzying, tinged with the uncertainty of what came next. "That was quite an exit," Daniel said, his hand still warm in mine, grounding me as we reached the parking lot. I let out a laugh, sharp and a little wild, surprising even myself. "I didn't plan any of it," I admitted, the adrenaline still buzzing in my veins. He slowed our pace, his gaze steady. "I believe you. And for what it's worth, I think you were incredible in there." I stopped, turning to face him, the rush of the moment fading and leaving me raw, vulnerable. "I just blew up my sister's wedding reception," I said, the reality crashing over me like a wave. "Oh God, I really did that." Daniel's expression softened, his eyes holding mine with quiet understanding. "You didn't blow anything up," he said gently. "You spoke your truth after being treated like you did not matter. That's not destruction, it's courage." I shook my head, emotions warring inside me. Guilt, relief, fear, defiance. Truth or not, I caused a scene everyone will talk about for years. That's not me, Daniel. I'm the one who fixes things, not the one who breaks them. "Maybe that's exactly why it had to happen," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "Maybe you've been fixing everyone else's messes for so long they forgot you have your own heart, your own limits." His words struck a chord, resonating with a truth I'd never fully acknowledged. For as long as I could remember, I'd been the family's anchor, the one who smoothed conflicts, paid bills, made sacrifices to keep everyone else afloat. That role had defined me, not just to them, but to myself until tonight, when I'd shattered it in a single, reckless act of self-preservation. "I need a drink," I said finally, the weight of the night pressing down. "Something stronger than wedding champagne?" Daniel grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "I know just the place. My car's over here." 20 minutes later, we were tucked into a corner booth at Harbor Point, a cozy waterfront bar far from the chaos of Pinerest Estate. The dim lighting and exposed brick walls created a sanctuary, the view of Elliott Bay's dark waters dotted with boat lights calming my frayed nerves. Sipping my whiskey sour, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to unravel, each breath a little easier than the last. Daniel sat across from me, his presence steady and unintrusive, giving me space to process while letting me know I wasn't alone. "I've never done anything like that before," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Standing up for myself like that, I mean." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes curious but kind. How does it feel?" I swirled my glass, considering the question. "Terrifying, exhilarating, like I just leapt off a cliff and I'm still waiting to see if I'll soar or crash." His smile widened, the corners of his eyes crinkling. From where I was standing, it looked a lot like soaring. Gratitude warmed my chest, not just for his words, but for the way he saw me, really saw me, even after all these years. Daniel had always had that gift, even back in college when we were fumbling through who we wanted to be. It was part of what had made our connection so deep, and what had made losing it so painful. "How did we drift apart, Daniel?" I asked suddenly, the question spilling out before I could stop it. "After everything we meant to each other." He looked surprised, but he didn't hesitate. "Life, I suppose. You went to New York for that internship. I stayed in Seattle. We promised to make it work, but long distance is brutal, and we were so young. Eventually, letting go felt easier than holding on to something that seemed impossible. I nodded, the ache of that old loss resurfacing. I remember, I said softly. But I've thought about you over the years, he added, his voice quieter now. Wondered how you were, if you were happy. I gave a rueful smile. Well, now you know, I built a business, funded my sister's dream wedding, and still ended up relegated to the kitchen. Daniel shook his head, his expression firm. That's not all I know. I know you had the guts to demand better tonight, and that's no small thing, Emma. My phone buzzed in my purse, insistent and jarring. I ignored it, but it buzzed again, relentless. You should check that, Daniel said, his tone gentle but practical. It might be important. With a sigh, I pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with 15 missed calls and over 30 texts, mostly from my mother and Olivia, with a few from my friend Megan. I scrolled through my family's messages, each one a fresh wound. My mother, Emma, come back right now. We need to fix this. Olivia, how could you ruin my wedding day? You've destroyed everything. My mother again. Your sister is in tears. I hope you're proud of yourself. My father. Your mother is distraught. Call immediately. Olivia, everyone's talking about it. Nathan's family is horrified. This is so humiliating. Not one message acknowledged my pain, my humiliation, the years of being treated as less than. It was all about them, their embarrassment, their disrupted narrative of perfect family unity. I set the phone down, tears burning my eyes. That bad? Daniel asked, his voice soft. Worse, I said, my throat tight. I'm the villain now, the selfish one who ruined Olivia's perfect day for no reason. He tilted his head, waiting. Are you going to reply? I stared at the phone, torn. Not tonight. I can't face their anger when mine is still so raw. Just then, a new text from Megan appeared. Just heard what happened. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? Relief washed over me, small but real. At least one person cared about me first, not the chaos I'd caused. I typed a quick reply. I'm okay, just need some space. We'll call tomorrow. As I set the phone down again, I looked at Daniel, his steady presence anchoring me. The night stretched ahead, uncertain but lighter than before. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd claimed a piece of myself back, even if it meant upending everything else. The night had unraveled in ways I never could have anticipated, and as I sat across from Daniel in the dimly lit bar, the weight of my actions pressed heavily on my chest. My phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with my mother's name, but I ignored it, my fingers trembling as I typed a quick response to Olivia's earlier message. I'm fine, catching up with an old friend over a drink. We'll talk tomorrow. Her reply came almost instantly. 3 words that sliced through me like a blade. Proud of you. Those words, so simple yet so rare, hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. They stirred something deep inside, a longing I'd buried under years of self-assurance and stoic independence. When was the last time anyone in my family had uttered those words to me? When had my achievements, my thriving business, my self-reliance, my quiet generosity, ever been acknowledged with the same fervor as Olivia's smallest victories? The realization stung, a sharp ache that spread through my chest, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed armor I'd worn for so long. I looked up at Daniel, my voice barely above a whisper as I confessed, you know what hurts the most? I thought I was okay with it, with being the invisible one, the one who holds everything together, who gives and gives without expecting a pat on the back. I told myself it was maturity, that I didn't need their validation to feel whole. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, raw and jagged. But it turns out I'm not above it. I'm just human, Daniel. And it hurts. God, it hurts so much to know that the people who are supposed to love me the most barely see me at all. I'm an afterthought in their world, a footnote in their story. Daniel's eyes softened, his gaze steady and warm, anchoring me in the storm of my emotions. Without a word, he reached across the table, his hand enveloping mine in a gentle, grounding grip. The warmth of his touch was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of my spiraling thoughts. You deserve so much better, Emma, he said, his voice low but firm, carrying a conviction that made my heart ache. You always have. His words weren't just a comfort. They were a mirror, reflecting a truth I'd been too afraid to face. For a moment, we sat there in silence, my hand cradled in his, the clinking glasses and muffled chatter of the bar fading into a distant hum. In that quiet space, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. I don't know what to do now, I admitted, my voice breaking as I finally gave voice to the uncertainty gnawing at me. I said what I said, and I meant every word, but I don't know how to face my family after this. I can't unring that bell, and honestly, I don't want to. But where do I go from here? My chest tightened with the weight of the unknown, the future stretching out before me like a dark, uncharted sea. Daniel squeezed my hand gently, his eyes never leaving mine. You don't have to have all the answers tonight, Emma. Give yourself permission to feel this, to process it. The path forward will reveal itself when the time is right. His words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of my heart. As if on cue, my phone lit up again, my mother's name flashing across the screen. This time I didn't hesitate. I powered it off completely, the act feeling like a small rebellion, a reclaiming of my own space. You're right, I said, a strange sense of freedom washing over me. Tonight, I just need to breathe. Tomorrow, I'll figure out what comes next. Daniel's lips curved into a gentle smile, and he raised his glass in a quiet toast. To breathing, he said, his voice warm with understanding, and to the Emma Walker, who's finally stepping into the spotlight, she deserves. I clinked my glass against his, a genuine smile breaking through the haze of my emotions for the first time that evening. To taking up space, I echoed, the words feeling like a vow to myself. We lingered at the bar for another hour, steering clear of the wedding and its fallout, instead diving into the stories of our lives over the past decade. Daniel shared tales of his work in sustainable architecture, his passion for creating spaces that harmonized with the environment evident in every word. He spoke of his travels, remote villages in South America, bustling cities in Europe, and the brief, ill-fated engagement that had left him wary of love, but wiser for it. I opened up about my business, the late nights and hard-won successes that had built it from the ground up. I told him about my cozy craftsman home, with its creaky floors and sunlit corners, and the community garden project where I spent my weekends, coaxing life from the soil alongside neighbors who'd become like family. The conversation flowed effortlessly, like rediscovering a favorite book you'd forgotten you loved. It was a reminder of the ease we'd once shared, a connection that time hadn't eroded. When it was time to leave, Daniel insisted on driving me home. No way I'm letting you take a rideshare after the night you've had, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The drive to my neighborhood was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts, the hum of the car a soothing backdrop. As we pulled up to my house, the porch light cast a warm glow over the front steps, a beacon of comfort in the darkness. I turned to him, my heart full and heavy all at once. Thank you, Daniel, I said, my voice thick with gratitude, for being there tonight, for getting me out of that chaos, for seeing me. His smile was soft, illuminated by the faint light filtering through the car windows. I've always seen you, Emma, he said, his words carrying a weight that made my breath catch. That's never changed. For a fleeting moment, I thought he might lean in, that the night might end with a kiss straight out of a movie script. But instead, he squeezed my hand one last time, his touch steady and reassuring. Get some rest, he said. Call me tomorrow if you need a friend, okay? I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. With a final squeeze, I stepped out of the car and walked to my front door, feeling the weight of his gaze until I was safely inside. The house was still, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions I'd been riding. I kicked off my heels, left my clutch on the side table, and made my way to the kitchen. Pouring myself a glass of water, I stood at the sink, staring out into the darkened backyard. The events of the night crashed over me again. The confrontation, the raw honesty, the line I'd drawn in the sand. But beneath the panic, there was a quiet resolve, a certainty that I'd done what needed to be done. For too long, I'd accepted the crumbs of affection my family offered, convincing myself that my worth was tied to my utility. But being seated in the kitchen at Olivia's wedding, that was the final straw. That was when I said, enough. I drained my glass and headed upstairs, carefully removing the sage green dress I'd chosen with such care for a wedding where no one had noticed it. As I hung it in the closet, my phone pinged, a reflex from turning it back on when I'd entered the house. Bracing for another angry message from my mother or Olivia, I was startled to see Daniel's name instead. "Just checking you got in okay," his text read. "Also, for what it's worth, the Emma who stood up for herself tonight is even more incredible than the one I knew back then. Sleep well. We'll talk soon." His words sparked something warm in my chest, a flicker of light in the darkness. It had been so long since anyone had called me incredible, longer still since I'd dared to believe it. Tears welled up, not from pain or anger, but from a release I hadn't realized I needed, a recognition of my own worth, a glimmer of hope. I fell asleep clutching my phone, Daniel's message the last thing I saw, and despite the bridges I'd burned, I slept more deeply than I had in years. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my uncurtained windows, painting my bedroom in golden hues. For a brief, blissful moment, I lay in bed, savoring the warmth of the light and the softness of my sheets. Then reality hit, the wedding, the confrontation, the fallout. My phone was a minefield of missed calls and messages, my family's overnight barrage waiting to be faced. But before I could dive into that chaos, my doorbell rang, insistent and unyielding. Groaning, I pulled on a robe and trudged downstairs, steeling myself for a possible face-to-face with my mother or Olivia. Instead, I opened the door to find Megan, holding a tray with 2 coffee cups and a bag that smelled of fresh pastries. "Figured you could use some backup," she said, breezing past me into the house. "Also, your mom's been parked across the street for at least 20 minutes, staking out your place like it's a crime scene." I glanced out the window and sure enough, there was her silver Lexus, glaringly out of place in my quiet neighborhood. "Oh, for heaven's sake," I muttered, following Megan to the kitchen. "Ignore her," Megan advised, setting the coffee and pastries on the island. "At least until you've had your hazelnut latte and one of these almond croissants from Pinerest." I grabbed the coffee, gratitude washing over me. "You're a mind-reading angel," I said, sinking onto a stool. Megan hopped onto the counter, her eyes gleaming with concern and curiosity. "So are we talking about how you went full supernova at your sister's wedding and then vanished with a mysterious hottie? Or am I going to have to drag the details out of you?" I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Not much of a mystery. It was Daniel Harrison." Megan's eyes widened. "Wait, the Daniel? College sweetheart? One who got away Daniel?" I nodded, sipping my latte. "The very same." Megan grinned, added, clearly thrilled. "That's a plot twist I didn't see coming. But don't think you can sidetrack me with romance. What happened at that wedding, Emma? I got a dozen texts from friends saying you caused a scene, but no one could agree on what went down." I sighed, the weight of it all settling back in. "They seated me in the kitchen, Meg. After everything I did, every dollar I spent, every detail I planned, they stuck me at a table in the kitchen like I was the help. It was the final straw, the moment I realized I'd been letting them treat me like an afterthought my whole life, and I couldn't take it anymore." The sting of being relegated to the kitchen annex at my sister Olivia's wedding still burned, sharp and raw, like a wound that refused to close. It wasn't just the physical placement, tucked away behind a swinging door surrounded by clattering dishes and the hurried whispers of catering staff. It was the message it sent. I was an afterthought, a family member to be hidden, as if my presence might tarnish the polished perfection of the day. The bitterness curled in my chest, mingling with a strange, reluctant amusement as I sat across from Megan in my cozy living room, the morning light filtering through the curtains. I tore a piece of croissant from the bakery bag between us, the flaky layers crumbling under my fingers, and let out a wry laugh. "Table 27, Megan," in the kitchen annex, like I was some distant cousin they couldn't quite disinvite but didn't want to claim either. Megan's face darkened, her hazel eyes narrowing as she leaned forward, her coffee mug forgotten on the table. Her anger was palpable, radiating off her like heat from a fire. She'd been my best friend since high school, a witness to the quiet, insidious ways my family had always made me feel like less. "They did what?" she asked, her voice low but laced with fury, as if she could barely process the audacity of it. They stuck you in the kitchen with the catering staff and a bunch of randos nobody wanted at the main event? I nodded, popping a piece of croissant into my mouth, the buttery taste doing little to soothe the ache in my chest. Yep, and when I called them out on it, guess what? Somehow it's my fault. My phone buzzed on the table, a relentless stream of notifications lighting up the screen. Texts from my mother, my sister, even a few from extended family members who'd caught wind of my scene at the reception. According to this, I said, gesturing at the phone with a bitter smile, I'm selfish, attention-seeking. I've single-handedly ruined Olivia's perfect day. Oh, and my personal favorite, I've made Mom physically ill with stress. Megan snorted, rolling her eyes as she leaned back in her chair. Classic Patricia Walker move. Blame you for everything while she plays the martyr. She'd seen it all before. Years of my mother's subtle manipulations, her knack for twisting any situation to make me the problem. Megan had been there through countless family dinners where Olivia's every minor accomplishment was fawned over, while my own successes, a promotion, a marathon I'd trained months for, were met with distracted nods or a quick change of subject. So give me the full story, Megan said, her tone shifting to one of eager curiosity, though her eyes still burned with indignation. What exactly went down last night? I want the whole scene, dialogue and all. I took a deep breath, the memories of the previous night flooding back with vivid clarity. It had started with a sinking feeling in my gut when I'd arrived at the venue, a sprawling estate bathed in golden light, and found my name on the seating chart. Table 27, tucked away in the kitchen annex, far from the glittering main hall where Olivia and her new husband Nathan were the center of attention. The realization hit me like a punch. I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being deliberately hidden. Me, who had quietly shouldered more than half the cost of this extravagant wedding, downplayed by my parents as a small contribution to spare Olivia's feelings. The hurt had simmered as I took my seat among strangers and distant relatives, the clink of glasses and laughter from the main room a constant reminder of my exclusion. By the time I'd had enough, the anger had built into something unstoppable. I'd stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, and marched into the main hall, my brother Daniel trailing behind me, his own frustration mirroring mine. I could still feel the heat in my cheeks as I'd faced my family, my voice steady but trembling with years of pent-up resentment. I'm done being invisible, I'd said, loud enough for the nearby tables to turn and stare. I paid for half this wedding, and you've got me stashed in the kitchen like I'm the help. If that's how you see me, I don't need to be here at all. The room had gone quiet, my mother's face frozen in a mask of shock and disapproval. Olivia's eyes wide with something that looked like shame but quickly hardened into anger. I hadn't waited for their responses. With Daniel at my side, I'd walked out, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap as I left the chaos behind. As I recounted the story, Megan's expression shifted like a kaleidoscope. Outrage at my family's audacity, satisfaction at my defiance, and finally a fierce glowing pride that made my throat tighten. Good for you, Emma, she said when I finished, her voice firm and unwavering. Seriously, I've been waiting 20 years for you to stand up to them like that. It's about damn time. I sighed, picking at the croissant crumbs on my plate. It doesn't feel as good as you'd think, I admitted, my voice softer now, heavy with the weight of what I'd done. Part of me feels free, like I've finally let out something I've been holding in forever. But there's this other part, this voice in my head telling me I should have just kept quiet, smiled, sat at that stupid kitchen table and let it go, like I always do. That voice was familiar, a constant companion shaped by years of my family's expectations. I was the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts, who sacrificed my own feelings to keep the fragile balance of our family intact. To speak out, to demand better, felt like a betrayal of that role, and yet it also felt like a betrayal of myself to stay silent. Megan leaned forward, her gaze piercing. That voice, that's not you, Emma. That's a lifetime of them conditioning you to put their feelings first. To be the fixer, the one who takes the hit so they don't have to. But you know what? That voice is wrong. You deserve better than being shoved to the side. and you were right to call it out. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with my mother's name for what felt like the 20th time since last night. My stomach twisted, a mix of dread and defiance churning inside me. Megan glanced at the phone, then back at me, her expression softening but still resolute. "You'll have to talk to her eventually," she said, though her tone suggested she'd rather I didn't. "But only when you're ready, and only on your terms." I stared at the screen, my mother's name glowing like a warning. Something shifted inside me, a calm, steady resolve that felt foreign but empowering. "You're right," I said, and before I could second-guess myself, I answered the call, putting it on speaker so Megan could hear. "Emma, finally." My mother's voice came through, tight and clipped, each word dripping with barely restrained frustration. "I'm outside your house. We need to talk about what happened last night." "Good morning to you too, Mom," I said, keeping my tone even, though my heart was pounding. "Don't be flippant, Emma," she snapped. "This is serious. You've upset your sister beyond words. You've embarrassed our entire family in front of all our friends and Nathan's family. Your father and I are mortified." "Are you still outside my house?" I cut in, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. There was a brief pause, the kind that always preceded one of her calculated responses. "Yes," she said, "and I'm not leaving until we've sorted this out." I locked eyes with Megan, who gave me a small, encouraging nod, her presence grounding me. "Okay," I said, my voice firm. "I'll come outside, but let me be clear about something first. I'm not apologizing for what I said last night. We can talk about how I said it, or when, but not about whether it needed to be said. Because it did." "Emma," my mother began, that familiar warning tone creeping into her voice, the one that had silenced me countless times, making me shrink back into compliance. But this time I didn't flinch. "No, Mom," I interrupted, my voice calm but unyielding. "Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." The silence that followed stretched longer, heavy with the weight of her indecision. I could picture her standing on the sidewalk, her perfectly pressed blouse and manicured nails at odds with the early hour, weighing whether her pride was worth prolonging this standoff. "Fine," she said at last, her voice tight. "I'll wait for you out here." I ended the call and turned to Megan, who was watching me with a mix of awe and amusement. "Well," I said, a wry smile tugging at my lips, "this should be fun." "Want me to stay?" Megan asked, half joking but entirely serious. "I can lurk menacingly in the background, maybe glare from a window for moral support." I laughed, the sound easing some of the tension in my chest. "Thanks, but I think I need to do this one alone. Besides, you're right about Mom. She's worse when she thinks she's being judged." My mother's obsession with appearances had always been her defining trait, the driving force behind her need to maintain the illusion of a perfect family. My outburst last night hadn't just challenged her authority, it had shattered that carefully curated facade in front of an audience, and that was what she couldn't forgive. Megan reached across the table, squeezing my hand with a warmth that steadied me. "I'm proud of you, Emma. You know that. And whatever happens out there, I've got your back." I squeezed her hand in return, the gratitude swelling in my chest almost too much to contain. "I know. That means everything." Taking a deep breath, I stood, tightening the belt of my robe and steeling myself for what lay ahead. This conversation with my mother wouldn't be fueled by the adrenaline of last night's confrontation. It would be raw, messier, complicated by the weight of our shared history. But I was ready, not just to defend myself, but to demand the respect I'd been denied for so long. Outside, my mother stood on the sidewalk, her posture rigid, her appearance impeccable despite the early hour. Her eyes swept over me as I stepped onto the porch, lingering on my robe with that familiar flicker of disapproval. "You couldn't have gotten dressed first?" she said, her voice sharp but tinged with something softer. Exhaustion, maybe, or uncertainty. "Good morning to you too, Mom," I replied, my tone light but edged with defiance. "How was the rest of the wedding reception?" Her flinch was subtle, but I caught it, and a pang of guilt flickered in my chest, quickly drowned out by irritation at myself for feeling it. I hadn't ruined Olivia's wedding. I'd simply refused to be erased, to let my family's dismissal of me go unchallenged. There was a difference, and it was time she saw it. We need to talk about what you did, she said, ignoring my question, her voice tight with barely contained anger. Your outburst ruined your sister's day. Everyone was talking about you instead of celebrating her. Nathan's family was appalled. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for us? And what about what you did? I countered, crossing my arms to mirror her defensive stance. Do we talk about that too, or are we only focusing on my part in this? Like how you seated me in the kitchen at my own sister's wedding? Or how you and Dad downplayed my contribution to make it seem like pocket change when I paid for more than half of it? My mother's expression hardened, but there was a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. We were protecting Olivia's feelings, she said, her tone defensive. She would have felt terrible if she knew how much you were spending. Would she? I asked, genuinely curious, though the memory of Olivia's reaction last night, her face flushed with embarrassment, not gratitude, told me otherwise. Because when I told her, she seemed more upset about being called out in front of everyone than about the fact that I was hidden away despite my generosity. My mother sighed, that long, practiced exhale she used to signal her disappointment in me. You've always been so dramatic about your place in this family, Emma. Always keeping score, always feeling slighted. It's exhausting. Her words hit like a slap, the casual dismissal of my pain igniting a fresh wave of anger. Dramatic, I said, my voice rising slightly despite my effort to stay calm. Is that what you call it when I notice that Olivia's every milestone gets a parade while mine barely get a mention? When her needs always come first, no matter what I've done or how much I've given? When I finally say enough after being shoved into the kitchen at an event I paid for? That's not fair, my mother protested, her arms tightening across her chest. We've always been proud of you. Have you? I shot back, the question hanging between us like a challenge. Because I can't remember the last time you said it. I can't remember the last time my accomplishments were the focus of a family conversation, or when my feelings mattered when you were making decisions. She bristled, her defenses rising. You're so independent, Emma. You always have been. You don't need the validation Olivia does. And there it was, the truth laid bare on the sidewalk, raw and unfiltered. My strength, my ability to keep going without demanding attention, wasn't something to be celebrated in her eyes. It was a reason to overlook me. Because I didn't crumble, because I didn't beg for their approval, I was deemed less deserving of their love. The realization settled over me, heavy but clarifying, like a fog lifting to reveal a stark, undeniable truth. That's not how love works, Mom, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. It's not a finite resource you ration out based on who seems to need it more. I shouldn't have to fall apart to prove I'm worthy of your attention. And I'm done pretending I'm okay with being treated like I don't matter. Emma Walker stood on her front porch, the early morning chill seeping through her bathrobe as she faced her mother, Patricia Walker. The sting of the previous night's wedding reception lingered like a bruise. Emma had poured her heart-earned savings into her younger sister Olivia's wedding, funding the venue, the catering, even the intricate lace of Olivia's gown, only to be seated in the kitchen, far from the celebration. The humiliation had ignited a fire within her, erupting in a public confrontation that left the reception in stunned silence. Now, with the neighborhood waking around them, Emma's voice trembled with years of pent-up hurt. Independence doesn't make me any less deserving of respect, she said, her words sharp but measured. Do you know what it felt like to be hidden away in the kitchen, Mom? Like I wasn't part of this family? Can you imagine how that hurt? Patricia's polished exterior faltered, her fingers tightening round her purse strap as her gaze slid away. It wasn't meant to hurt you, Emma, she said thinly. The venue had limited space. Emma's laugh was sharp, cutting through the quiet. Limited space? I booked that venue, Mom. I know exactly how many tables fit. Table 27 was for the people no one wanted at the main reception. Patricia opened her mouth, but her defense faltered, as if she heard its weakness. Emma pressed on, her voice quivering with raw vulnerability. The seating isn't even the worst part. It's that you, Dad, and Olivia didn't think about how it would make me feel. You're so used to me going along, fixing things, paying for things, that my feelings didn't even register. Patricia stood silent, her eyes betraying a flicker of conflict, her instinct to deflect warring with the truth of Emma's words. "What do you want, Emma? An apology?" she asked softly. Emma shook her head, a sad smile tugging at her lips. "Saying I'm sorry you were upset isn't an apology. It blames me for feeling hurt. I want you to see me, Mom, to recognize that I matter as much as Olivia, that my contributions to this family, to her wedding, aren't just practical. They're me." Her voice broke, but she held her mother's gaze. Patricia stiffened, her discomfort with raw emotion palpable. "Of course you matter, Emma. Don't be ridiculous." But her tone wavered and Emma's heart sank. "Do I?" she asked quietly. "Because it feels like I only matter when I'm useful, when I'm writing checks or solving problems. Why else was I in the kitchen while Olivia celebrated a wedding I paid for?" The question hung heavy, unanswered. Patricia's gaze dropped, and for the first time Emma saw regret in her mother's eyes. "I don't know what you want me to say," Patricia murmured. "The seating was a mistake. But you can't disrupt Olivia's wedding and expect everyone to be fine with it." Emma leaned against the porch railing, exhaustion settling over her. "I didn't plan to cause a scene. I was hurt, angry. Maybe I could have handled it better. But would you have listened if I'd approached you quietly? Would anything have changed?" Patricia hesitated, caught off guard. "Of course I would have listened," she said, but the words lacked conviction. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Really? I've spent years trying to talk about the favoritism, about feeling second to Olivia, and it's always, 'That's just how siblings are,' or 'You're too sensitive.' When have you ever taken me seriously?" Patricia's gaze fell and Emma saw genuine regret flicker across her face. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she said quietly. Emma softened but held firm. "Intent doesn't change how it feels. I know you didn't set out to make me feel less valued, but your choices have." As a car passed slowly, the driver glancing at the two women, Emma laughed at the absurdity, her in pajamas, arguing on the sidewalk. "What's funny?" Patricia asked, startled. "This," Emma gestured between them. "Us having our most honest talk in years, out here while the neighbors watch." Patricia's lips twitched into a small smile, rather undignified. The tension eased slightly. "Come inside," Emma offered. "I have coffee." Patricia hesitated. "Is Megan there?" Emma nodded. "She brought breakfast. Perfect timing, as always." Patricia sighed, her complex feelings about Megan, admiration for her career, unease at her boldness, evident. "She can leave if it's easier," Emma said. "No," Patricia replied. "Might as well have an audience." Inside, Megan lounged at the kitchen table, croissant in hand, feigning nonchalance. "Mrs. Walker," she greeted, her tone teasing. "Coffee? I brought extra." Patricia sat stiffly on a stool. "I'm fine, thank you." Silence settled, heavy and awkward. Emma poured coffee she didn't want, her hands restless. Megan broke the tension. "Heard Emma was in the kitchen last night. If I get married and she pays for half, I'd seat her in the same room." Patricia's lips thinned. "You oversimplify, Megan." Megan grinned. "And you complicate simple things, Mrs. Walker, like treating your kids equally." "Enough," Emma cut in. "Well, Megan, I appreciate you, but I need to handle this." Megan raised her hands. "Fine, I'll sit quietly and pretend I'm not judging." Emma smiled despite herself. Turning to Patricia, she said, "I meant what I said outside. I'm not sorry for speaking the truth last night, but I'm sorry for how and when. I didn't want to ruin Olivia's wedding." Patricia nodded. "I believe you have always been considerate, even when others aren't." Emma finished, "Even when others aren't considerate of me." The silence softened. "How's Olivia?" Emma asked. Patricia's face warmed. "Upset, confused, embarrassed. Nathan's family had questions after you left." Emma winced, picturing the awkward fallout. "In Dad?" Patricia smiled faintly. "You know your father." Robert's stoic silence was his refuge. "And you, Mom?" Emma pressed. Patricia faltered. "I don't know, Emma. I thought I knew this family, but last night, I'm not sure of anything." Her honesty startled Emma, a rare crack in her mother's control. "I know the feeling," Emma whispered. "The air in my kitchen felt thick, charged with the weight of unspoken truths as my mother's gaze flickered between me and Megan, who stood quietly by the counter. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, seemed to measure every word she was about to let slip, as if Megan's presence was a barrier she wasn't sure how to navigate. "Your father and I," she began, her voice low, almost hesitant. "We stayed up late last night, long after the guests had gone. We talked about you, about Olivia, about things we might not have noticed before, patterns we've fallen into over the years." Her words hit me like a quiet shockwave, stirring something fragile in my chest, a flicker of hope so delicate I was afraid to acknowledge it. I held my breath, waiting for her to go on, my heart pounding with the possibility that, for once, she might truly see me. She let out a soft sigh, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing absent circles on the smooth surface of my kitchen counter, as if the motion could ground her in this unfamiliar territory. "It's possible," she said, her voice catching slightly, "that we haven't always been as attentive to you as we have to Olivia. Maybe we've missed things, focused too much on her needs." The admission hung in the air, heavy and raw, and from the corner of my eye I caught Megan stifling a sound, half snort, half disbelief. I shot her a quick warning glance, silently pleading for her to stay out of it. My mother's words, though tentative, were a crack in the armor she'd worn for years, and I wasn't about to let that moment shatter. I swallowed hard, choosing my response with care, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "I appreciate you saying that, Mom. It means something to hear it. But it's not just about attention. It's deeper than that. It's about respect, about being acknowledged, about feeling like I'm a real part of this family. Not just when I'm solving problems or stepping up, but always. I need to be seen for who I am, not just for what I do." My words felt like a release, a truth I'd carried for so long it had become a part of me, and saying them aloud was both terrifying and freeing. My mother's face tightened, a flicker of defensiveness creeping into her expression, though she tried to mask it. "I do see you, Emma," she said, her tone edged with something close to hurt. "You've always been so strong, so capable. You never seemed to need us the way Olivia did. She's always been fragile, you know that." Her words stung, not because they were untrue, but because they revealed how she justified years of imbalance. To her, my strength had been an excuse, a reason to overlook me, while Olivia's fragility demanded their constant care. "Everyone needs to feel valued, Mom, and I said, my voice softer now but firm. Even the capable ones, even the self-sufficient ones. Strength doesn't mean I don't have needs or that I don't hurt when I'm pushed aside." The words landed between us, and for a moment, she was silent, her eyes searching mine as if seeing me for the first time. Slowly she nodded, absorbing my words, though I could tell they unsettled her, challenging the framework she'd built her understanding of our family upon. A heavy silence settled over us, less jagged than the tension that had filled the room earlier, but still laced with the weight of years of unspoken pain. I could feel the ache of those years in my chest, the countless moments I'd swallowed my hurt, smiled through slights, and played the role of the dependable daughter. My mother broke the silence first, her voice tentative. "So, what happens now?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine with a vulnerability I wasn't used to seeing. "Olivia, she wants to talk to you. She's got questions, especially about what you said last night, about the money." The mention of Olivia and the money sent a jolt through me, a reminder of the bombshell I dropped at the wedding, the fact that I'd quietly funded most of it, a truth my parents had kept from her. The memory of Olivia's shocked face, the whispers that had rippled through the room, came rushing back, and with it, a wave of exhaustion. "I'm not ready to talk to her yet," I admitted, my voice raw. "I need time, Mom. I need to sort through everything that's happened, everything I've been carrying. I can't just jump into a conversation because she's ready." My mother's lips parted, and for a moment, I braced myself for the familiar push, the subtle guilt trip that always came when Olivia's needs were at stake. "She's your sister, Emma," she said, and there it was, the old pattern, slipping back into place, her tone implying that my boundaries were an inconvenience. But this time I didn't waver. "Yes, she is," I said, meeting her gaze. "And I love her, but loving her doesn't mean I have to have a conversation I'm not ready for, just because she wants it right now. When I'm ready, I'll reach out to her Not before. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see the argument forming behind them, the instinct to press harder. But then something shifted. She exhaled, her shoulders softening, and instead of pushing, she said, "All right, I'll tell her you need some time." The words were simple, but they felt like a small victory, a rare acknowledgement of my needs over Olivia's demands. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it, the gratitude warming the edges of my frayed emotions. She stood then, smoothing her already flawless slacks with a practiced motion, as if preparing to step back into the world where she was always in control. "I should go," she said. "Your father will be wondering where I am." I walked her to the door, Megan staying behind in the kitchen, giving us a moment alone. At the threshold, my mother paused, turning to face me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, part regret, part resolve, part something softer I hadn't seen before. "I am proud of you, Emma," she said, the words stiff, almost foreign on her tongue, as if she'd rehearsed them but wasn't sure how they'd land. "Of your business, of everything you've built. I know I don't say it enough, but I am." Her words hit me like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming, sending ripples of emotion through me. Grief for the times I'd longed to hear them, joy that she'd finally said them, and a quiet fear that they might not change anything. "Thank you," I managed, my voice thick with unshed tears. "That, it means a lot." She nodded, clearly uncomfortable with the rawness of the moment, and murmured, "We'll talk again soon." It wasn't a question, but I agreed anyway. "We will." And then she was gone, her heels clicking briskly down the path to her car, her posture as perfect as ever, a shield against the vulnerability she'd let slip. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a shaky breath, the weight of the conversation settling into my bones. "Well," Megan's voice came from the kitchen doorway, laced with her usual dry humor. That was something. I pushed off the door, managing a small smile. It really was. I think that's the first time in my entire adult life my mother actually listened to me. Megan raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching. "Miracles do happen, huh?" Though I noticed she stopped just short of a full apology. I shrugged, moving past her to the kitchen, picking up my now cold coffee. "Baby steps, Meg. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the Patricia Walker humility tour definitely won't be either." Megan snorted, following me. "Fair enough. So what's next?" I sighed, leaning against the counter, the question echoing in my mind. "Next, I need a shower, clean clothes, and some time to figure out what to do about Olivia." Megan's eyes gleamed mischievously. "And Daniel," she added, waggling her eyebrows, "don't think I've forgotten about that little reunion last night." Despite the heaviness of the morning, I felt warmth creep up my neck, a blush I couldn't hide. "It was one night, one drink," I protested. "We just happened to be at the same wedding." Megan smirked, unconvinced. "Uh-huh. And the fact that he just happened to text you afterward to make sure you got home safe? Total coincidence, right?" I rolled my eyes, but a small smile tugged at my lips. "It's called being polite. It's called still being into you," she countered, her tone smug. "Trust me, I know these things." I shook my head, but the thought of Daniel, his easy smile, the way he'd listened last night, the warmth in his voice, felt like a bright spot in the chaos of my emotions. "Even if, and that's a big if, there's something there, now's hardly the time," I said, trying to sound practical. "I just blew up my relationship with my family. I'm not exactly in a great place for whatever that might be." Megan tilted her head, her expression softening. "Or maybe it's exactly the right time. You're finally standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, demanding respect. That's the kind of foundation you need for something real, something healthy." Her words gave me pause, and though I wasn't ready to admit it, I felt a spark of possibility. "We'll see," I said, deflecting, but the idea lingered, warm and tempting. After Megan left, promising to check in later, I headed upstairs, letting the hot water of a long shower wash away the morning's tension. As steam filled the bathroom, my thoughts drifted, not just to my family, but to the bigger question of what came next for me. For so long, I'd defined myself by my roles. Dutiful daughter, supportive sister, the one who fixed things, who smoothed over conflicts. If I was rewriting those relationships, demanding respect, setting boundaries, Who would I be when I wasn't twisting myself to fit their expectations? The question felt daunting but also exhilarating, like stepping into uncharted territory with no map but a quiet confidence that I'd find my way. Wrapped in a towel, my hair dripping onto my shoulders, I padded into my bedroom and checked my phone. A flurry of texts had come in while I was showering. One from my father, short and to the point. As always, your mother told me you talked. Good. Call when you're ready. The brevity was so quintessentially him, yet the fact that he'd reached out at all surprised me. My father, Robert Walker, had always been a man of few words, content to let my mother steer the family's emotional course while he focused on work and his weekend golf games. His text, though sparse, felt like an olive branch, and I tucked it away in my mind for later. Then there were Olivia's texts, a chaotic mix of emotions that mirrored her personality. The first was angry. How could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone? The next confused. Why didn't you tell me you were paying for so much? And the last waste with hurt. I would never have put you in the kitchen if I'd known. That one stopped me cold, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. So it wasn't the act of relegating me to the kitchen that was wrong. It was only wrong because I'd paid for the wedding. The implication was clear. My worth was tied to my financial contribution, not my place as her sister. The realization cut deep, reinforcing why I wasn't ready to talk to her yet. And then there was Daniel's text, simple and warm. Been thinking about you this morning. Hope things went okay with your mom. Coffee sometime this week? A genuine smile broke through the heaviness, and I typed back, coffee sounds great. Wednesday? His reply came instantly. Wednesday is perfect. Lighthouse Cafe at 4. See you there. I sent a quick confirmation, and the exchange lifted my spirits. A small reminder of normalcy, of possibilities that didn't come with the baggage of family drama. I dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, clothes that felt like me, not the carefully curated outfit I'd worn to the wedding, hoping to be noticed. As I dried my hair, I thought about my next steps. Olivia wasn't ready for a conversation. Her text showed she was still too wrapped in her own perspective, too focused on how my truth had disrupted her perfect day to understand my pain. That talk would come, but not yet. My father, though, his text intrigued me. His willingness to engage, however briefly, suggested an openness I hadn't expected. But even that could wait. For now, today was mine. I made a fresh cup of coffee and settled into my favorite armchair by the bay window. The autumn sunlight filtering through the maple leaves, casting soft shadows across the grass. The quiet was a gift, a chance to breathe, to begin mapping this new chapter. My phone buzzed, startling me, an unknown number. Curious, I answered. Hello? A familiar voice came through, catching me off guard. Hello, Emma. It's Nathan. I nearly dropped the phone, my heart skipping a beat. Nathan. The phone felt heavy in my hand, its cool surface grounding me as Nathan's voice came through, tinged with a nervousness that made my stomach twist. Your dad gave me your number, he said, his words stumbling slightly as if he were tiptoeing around a fragile truth. I hope that's all right. I needed to talk to you about last night. My fingers tightened instinctively, the pressure mirroring the sudden clench in my chest. Last night, the wedding, the chaos, the sting of feeling invisible, came rushing back, sharp and unyielding. I braced myself, half expecting some rehearsed defense orchestrated by my sister. If Olivia put you up to this, I started, my voice edged with suspicion. She didn't, Nathan cut in, quick and firm. She doesn't even know I'm calling. His sincerity caught me off guard, softening the defensive wall I'd built. Emma, I had no clue about the money, how much you contributed to our wedding, and the seating. I didn't know about that either, not until it was too late. His voice cracked with distress, raw and unguarded, and I found myself believing him, despite the hurt still pulsing through me. Too late how? I asked, my tone softer now, curiosity outweighing my wariness. Nathan let out a heavy sigh, the sound carrying the weight of his regret. I didn't see the final seating chart until guests were already arriving. By then, rearranging things felt like it would cause more chaos than just letting it slide. But I should have spoken up. I should have done something. I'm sorry. The apology landed like a quiet gift, simple yet disarming. It wasn't grand or performative, just honest, and it stirred something in me, a mix of relief and vulnerability I hadn't expected. Thank you, I murmured, unsure what else to say, my emotions still tangled. And the money, Nathan pressed on, his voice steadier now, but still earnest. I thought your parents were covering the gap. If I'd known you were putting in so much, He trailed off, and I could almost picture him running a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. You would have what? I asked, not harshly, but with a quiet challenge, wanting to understand his heart. He hesitated, then admitted, I probably wouldn't have declined it, but I would have made damn sure you weren't shoved in the kitchen, for starters. And I would have thanked you, properly, publicly, for what you did for us. His words hit me like a wave, not because I'd craved recognition for the money I'd given, freely, without strings, but because he saw what I'd needed. Acknowledgement, respect, a place at the table, literally and figuratively. I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. The hurt didn't vanish, but it softened, making room for a flicker of gratitude. I appreciate that, Nathan, I said at last, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside. And I'm sorry for how I left the reception. That wasn't fair to you. Life's not fair, he replied, a wry chuckle breaking through his solemn tone. I'm learning that fast. Did you know my mom cornered me after you stormed out? She was furious, demanding to know why my new sister-in-law was treated like an afterthought. A smile tugged at my lips, unexpected and warm. Really? Oh yeah, he said, his voice lightening. Mom's all about standing up for yourself. She said, and I quote, that girl's got spine. I like her. The thought of Nathan's mother, a retired federal judge with a reputation for cutting through nonsense, approving of my dramatic exit was oddly comforting, like a nod from someone who saw me when my own family hadn't. Well, tell her thanks for the support, I said, my smile lingering. I will. He paused, and I heard the faint rustle of him shifting the phone, as if gathering his thoughts. Look, Emma, I know things are messy with your family right now, but I want you to know you're part of mine. No matter what happens with Olivia or your parents, I'd like us to stay family. His words landed deep, touching a raw, tender place I hadn't realized was aching. In the whirlwind of last night's fallout, I hadn't considered what my relationship with Nathan might mean moving forward. We'd always gotten along, but our connection had been through Olivia, filtered by her presence. The idea that he valued me on my own, that he wanted to build something independent of her, felt like a lifeline in the storm. I'd like that too, I said, my voice thick with sincerity. A quiet relief seemed to pass through the line, and for a moment we sat in a comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people truly see each other. So what's next for you and Olivia? Nathan asked gently, breaking the pause. I sighed, sinking back into my chair, the weight of the question settling over me. I don't know yet. I need time to sort through it all. Her text this morning, she still doesn't get why I'm hurt. Give her time, Nathan advised, his tone kind but realistic. Olivia struggles with criticism, you know that. But she loves you, Emma. Once she gets past her defenses, I think she'll hear you. I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered, heavy and stubborn. I hope so, I said, though my confidence didn't match his. But I can't go back to how things were. I won't. Well, I wouldn't expect you to, he replied, his words surprising me with their quiet strength. You deserve better. We all do. Another silence fell, warm and understanding, before Nathan spoke again. I should get going. We're due at the airport soon for the honeymoon. Costa Rica, right? I asked, a memory flashing of helping Olivia research eco-resorts months ago, back when wedding planning felt like a shared adventure, not a source of pain. Right, he said, a smile in his voice. 2 weeks of beaches, rainforests, and hopefully no family drama. Sounds perfect, I said, genuinely happy for him, despite the ache in my chest. Have an amazing time, Nathan. Thanks, Emma. And thank you again for everything you did for the wedding. It was beautiful, and I'll never forget it. After we hung up, I sat with my coffee, now cold, turning the conversation over in my mind. Nathan's call had been a balm I hadn't known I needed, a moment of being seen and valued that soothed the raw edges of my hurt. The irony wasn't lost on me. My newest family member, with no obligation to me, had offered the apology and acknowledgement I'd craved from my own blood. I was still lost in thought when the doorbell rang, its chime pulling me back to the present. My heart quickened, wondering if Megan had returned or, worse, if my mother had decided to confront me again. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. My breath caught. Olivia stood on my porch, still in her travel clothes, her hair scraped back in a messy ponytail. Even through the distorted lens, her red-rimmed eyes betrayed hours of crying. For a long moment, I stood frozen, my hand on the doorknob, torn between opening the door and retreating. I wasn't ready for this, not after telling Nathan I needed time. I hadn't sorted out my feelings, hadn't prepared for whatever Olivia might say, whether accusations or excuses, but as I watched, her shoulders slumped, and she turned to leave, defeat etched into her posture. In that moment, despite the pain, my heart softened. She was still my sister, the girl who'd crawled into my bed during storms, who'd called me giddy after meeting Nathan, who'd trusted me with her wedding dreams, even if she hadn't always listened. Before I could overthink it, I opened the door. Olivia spun around, her eyes wide with surprise. "Emma," she said, her voice breaking. "I wasn't sure you were home." "I'm home," I said, not yet stepping aside to invite her in. "Nathan called. Aren't you supposed to be heading to the airport?" She nodded, fidgeting with her purse strap, her fingers restless. "We are, soon. I needed to see you first. To talk." I studied her face, searching for the anger I'd braced for, but found only confusion, hurt, and something like fear, a vulnerability I hadn't expected. "Okay," I said finally, stepping back to let her in. "Let's talk." Olivia hesitated, as if unsure she was truly welcome, even after my invitation. "Are you sure? I know you're probably still mad at me, and you have every right to be." Her admission, so unlike her usual defensiveness, startled me. "I'm not mad, Liv," I said, the truth settling into my words. "I'm hurt. There's a difference." She nodded, stepping into my house with a tentative caution I'd never seen in her before. "I know, that's what Nathan said, actually, that I needed to understand the difference." Interesting. Nathan had clearly been busy, not just reaching out to me, but also nudging Olivia toward understanding. I made a mental note to thank him later for his quiet diplomacy. I led her to the living room, gesturing to the couch while I took my reading chair. The space between us, a necessary buffer to keep my emotions clear. For a moment, we just sat there, two sisters bound by a shared past but separated by the women we'd become, strangers in some ways despite our history. "I didn't know," Olivia said at last, her voice breaking the silence. "About the money. Mom and Dad said you were helping with some costs, but they never told me, never said it was that much." "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly, my gaze steady on hers. "If you'd known, would anything have been different?" The air in the room felt thick with unspoken truths as Olivia's face crumpled, her eyes wide with shock at my words. "Different?" she echoed, her voice trembling as though the question had pierced something deep within her. "Emma, if I'd known you were footing most of the bill for my wedding, I swear I'd never have let you sit in the kitchen." That's unthinkable." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed a truth I hadn't wanted to face. I flinched, the ache in my chest sharpening at her phrasing. So it wasn't the fact that she'd relegated her only sister to the sidelines of her celebration that bothered her. It was that she'd done it to the person who'd paid for it all. The realization twisted like a knife. "Liv," I added, my voice softer than I felt, struggling to keep the hurt from spilling over. "The issue isn't that you seated your financial benefactor in the kitchen. It's that you seated your sister there, away from everyone else, like I didn't belong." Her brow creased, confusion flickering across her face as she grappled with the weight of her own words. "No, that's not what I meant," she stammered, her voice faltering as the implication of her statement dawned on her. "It shouldn't have mattered how much you contributed. You're my sister, Emma. That should have been enough." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment I saw the Olivia I used to know, the one who'd braid my hair when we were kids, who'd share her Halloween candy when I'd eaten all of mine. But that girl felt so far away now. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Liv, it hurt because you didn't even question it. You didn't think it was strange that I was tucked away in the kitchen, separate from the family, while everyone else celebrated. That's what cuts the deepest, that it didn't even seem wrong to you. A single tear sipped down her cheek, catching the light as it fell. "I'm so sorry, Emma," she whispered, her voice raw with regret. "Not just for the seating, but for everything. For taking you for granted, for not seeing how much you have done for me. Not just for the wedding, but for our whole lives." Her words hung in the air, heavy with a sincerity I hadn't expected. This wasn't the Olivia I'd braced myself for, the one who'd deflect or make excuses. This was someone confronting her own flaws, and it stirred something fragile in me, a flicker of hope I hadn't dared to feel in years. "Thank you for saying that," I said carefully, my voice catching as I tried to balance the hurt with this new tentative warmth. "It means more than you know." Olivia wiped at her tears, her hands trembling as she fought to compose herself. "When you left last night, after everything you said, it was like a fog lifted. I started seeing all these moments from our lives in a new light, things I never questioned before. Like how Mom and Dad always made it to my dance recitals but missed so many of your debate tournaments. Or how they threw me that massive graduation party when I finished college. But when you graduated grad school, it was just a quiet dinner. I never saw it then, but I see it now and it makes me feel awful." Her words hit me like a wave, not because they were new, but because she'd noticed. All those years, I'd carried the weight of those slights alone, convincing myself I was overreacting, that I was too sensitive. Hearing Olivia acknowledge them now was both validating and disorienting. "And it's not just them," she continued, her voice breaking as fresh tears welled up. "It's me too. I borrowed your car for that road trip with my friends in college and brought it back with a dent and an empty tank, like it didn't matter. I never helped you move into your house, even after you spent days unpacking boxes for my first apartment. And then, the wedding. I let you sit in the kitchen after you poured so much into making it perfect. I don't know how I didn't see it before." Her sobs broke free, raw and unfiltered, and for the first time I saw the depth of her remorse, not just for one moment, but for a lifetime of oversight. The walls I'd built around my heart began to crack. "Liv," I said softly, sliding onto the couch beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence. "I didn't bring this up to make you feel terrible. I just couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep swallowing the hurt." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know, and you shouldn't have had to. I should have seen it. I should have been a better sister." Her words echoed the ache I'd carried for so long. Not excuses, not deflections, just an honest acknowledgement of the pattern and her role in it. It was what I'd needed to hear, even if I hadn't known it until now. "I want to do better," she said, her tear-streaked face turning to meet my gaze. "If you'll let me, if it's not too late." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, the familiar softness of her skin grounding me. "It's not too late," I said, my voice steady with conviction. "But things have to change, Liv. I can't keep being the one who gives everything, who supports everyone, without getting anything back." Her grip tightened on my hand, her eyes fierce with determination. "I don't want that either. I want us to be equals, to have a real relationship." For the first time that day, a genuine smile spread across my face, warm and unforced. "I'd like that too." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of unspoken resentment lifting, leaving the air between us lighter than it had been in ages. "You should get going," I said reluctantly, glancing at the clock. "You've got a plane to catch." Olivia nodded but didn't move, her eyes searching mine. "Are we okay?" she asked, her voice small and vulnerable. "I know we've got more to work through, but are we okay for now?" I paused, letting the question settle. The pain from the wedding hadn't vanished. A single conversation couldn't erase a lifetime of patterns. But she was here, listening, owning her mistakes. It was a start, a real one. "We're okay," I said, giving her hand another squeeze. "Not perfect, but okay, and that's enough for now." Relief flooded her face, her shoulders sagging as if she'd been holding her breath. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for giving me another chance." I smiled softly. That's what sisters do. As we walked to the door, she turned to me one last time. Emma, she said hesitantly, I never properly thanked you for everything you did for the wedding. It was more than I deserved. The simplicity of her words carried a weight that settled deep in my chest. You're welcome, I said. I did it because I love you. Her eyes filled again, but she smiled through the tears. I know. I love you too. We hugged, a real lingering embrace, not the fleeting, perfunctory ones we'd exchanged in recent years. As I watched her walk to her car, her silhouette framed by the fading daylight, I felt something shift inside me. Something healing. Something hopeful. The conversation hadn't fixed everything. There were still boundaries to set, more talks to have, and a long road ahead to reshape our relationship and my dynamic with our parents. But for the first time in years, I felt like that road might lead somewhere, that I might finally be seen. Not just as the reliable one, the one who gives and gives, but as Emma, a full and equal part of this messy, imperfect family. As her car disappeared down the street, I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaustion washing over me, mingled with a strange, quiet peace. In the span of a day, my world had been upended and set right again, tilted on a new axis. Nothing was fully resolved, but everything had changed. And somehow I felt lighter than I had in years. The days that followed were a strange, suspended moment in time. After the emotional whirlwind of the wedding and our conversation, I craved simplicity. I worked from home, diving into client projects I'd neglected while pouring myself into Olivia's big day. I cooked elaborate meals for myself, savoring the act of creating something just for me. Roasted vegetables with fresh herbs, a creamy risotto I'd never taken the time to perfect before. I took long walks through my neighborhood, the autumn leaves swirling in lazy spirals of crimson and gold, each one a reminder of time moving forward, of seasons changing. I thought a lot about Olivia, about our parents, about the patterns I'd let define me for too long. My family reached out tentatively. My father sent a few texts, less demanding than usual, as if he sensed the shift in me. My mother sent her usual cheerful messages, oblivious to the undercurrents, along with a few postcard-perfect photos from Olivia's honeymoon in Costa Rica, white sand beaches, turquoise waves, Olivia's radiant smile. I responded politely, but kept my distance, guarding the space I needed to process everything. By Wednesday afternoon, as I prepared to meet Daniel at Lighthouse Cafe, I felt steadier, the raw edges of my hurt softening into something more manageable, something that left room for clarity about what I wanted, not just from my family, but from my life. The cafe was alive with the hum of conversation when I arrived, the lunchtime crowd just beginning to thin. Through the window, I spotted Daniel in the corner, 2 steaming cups of coffee on the table before him. He was engrossed in his phone, a small furrow between his brows, his familiar intensity making my chest ache with a mix of nostalgia and something new, something I couldn't quite name. He looked up as I approached, his face breaking into a warm, unguarded smile. Perfect timing, he said, gesturing to the coffee. Just got here. I remembered you like it with almond milk and cinnamon. I blinked, surprised by the detail. You remembered that? He shrugged, a faint flush creeping up his cheeks. Some things stick. I settled into the chair across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, the scent of cinnamon grounding me. Thank you, I said, my voice soft. For the coffee and for the other night, for getting me out of there when I needed an escape. He waved it off, his eyes kind. Anytime, though I hope your next wedding's a little less eventful. I groaned, a laugh escaping, despite myself. Don't even mention weddings right now. I'm still recovering from this one. His expression sobered, his gaze searching. How are you holding up? I cradled my coffee mug, the warmth seeping into my palms as I mulled over Daniel's question. You doing, really? He'd asked, his voice soft but probing, like he could sense the weight I'd been carrying. The steam from the coffee curled upward, and I took a slow sip, letting the bitter richness ground me. My mind drifted to the raw, jagged conversations I'd had with my mom and Olivia. They weren't easy. Words had been sharp, silences heavy, but they'd been necessary. Like lancing a wound, the pain came with a strange relief. The issues were out now, exposed to the air, no longer festering in the dark corners of my heart. It's not fixed, I said, meeting Daniel's steady gaze. But at least it's a start. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his smile warm and encouraging, like sunlight breaking through a cloudy day. That's something, and he said. Sometimes just naming the problem is half the fight. His words struck a chord, and I found myself nodding, a memory surfacing. My therapist used to say that, I blurted, then froze, heat creeping up my neck. Why had I brought that up? I mean, back when I was seeing one, after the divorce. The word hung between us, heavy and unexpected, and I immediately regretted letting it slip. Daniel's eyebrows lifted, his hazel eyes widening just enough to betray his surprise. You were married? I nodded, my fingers tightening around the mug as I realized how little we truly knew about each other's lives. Despite the easy banter, the shared history from college, and the effortless connection we'd rekindled at my sister's wedding, there were vast, uncharted gaps in our stories. Yeah, I said, forcing a light tone. To Matt Pearson, of all people, my college advisor's son. We met at a department event right after I graduated. Daniel's expression shifted, recognition dawning. Professor Pearson's kid? The med school guy? The very same, I confirmed, a wry smile tugging at my lips. We dated for 2 years, got married, and were divorced 14 months later. Classic case of seemed like a good idea at the time. I tried to keep my voice breezy, but the memories carried a faint sting, like brushing against an old bruise. Even now, years later, the disappointment lingered, not just in Matt, but in myself for believing we could make it work. Daniel tilted his head, his curiosity gentle but unmistakable. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? I shrugged, staring into my coffee as if it held the answers. The usual stuff. We wanted different things. He was consumed by his residency. Long hours, endless stress. I was pouring everything into building my business. We both worked too much, talked too little. When things got rough, we realized we didn't have the foundation to hold it together. My voice softened as I spoke, the weight of those years settling over me. It was hard for a while, but honestly, by the end, it was a relief. We were just making each other miserable. Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful, no trace of judgment in his eyes. I'm sorry you went through that, he said quietly, but I get it. A rueful smile curved his lips. My engagement ended in a similar way. All the signs were there that we weren't right for each other, but we kept pushing forward because it felt like the next step. Breaking it off hurt like hell, but it was also like setting down a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. His honesty caught me off guard, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a quiet kinship in our shared failures. Exactly, I said, returning his smile. Though I'll admit it messed with my confidence for a long time, made me second-guess my judgment. I laughed softly, the sound tinged with self-deprecation. Daniel leaned forward, his gaze steady and kind. That's understandable. But for what it's worth, I think your judgment's pretty damn good. I raised an eyebrow, a playful challenge in my tone. Oh yeah, based on what evidence exactly? He grinned, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Well, you dated me in college, for one. Clearly a sign of impeccable taste. The laughter that burst from me was loud and unguarded, surprising even myself with its fullness. Watch that ego, Harrison, I teased. It might not fit through the door when we leave. The banter flowed so easily, familiar yet fresh, laced with the comfort of our shared past, but alive with the possibility of something new. As we talked, moving from past relationships to our careers, hobbies, and the lives we'd built over the past decade, I felt myself unraveling in the best way. The tension I'd been carrying about my family, my business, the wedding, began to loosen. Daniel's genuine interest, the way he listened without rushing to fill the silences, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. So the website business turned into a full-blown digital marketing agency, he asked, his tone laced with admiration. I nodded, unable to hide the pride swelling in my chest. 3 full-time employees, plus a network of freelancers I work with regularly. We focus on small to mid-sized local businesses, helping them compete online without needing the budgets of the big players. Daniel's eyes lit up. That's incredible, Emma. Then a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. That explains how you could afford to fund most of your sister's wedding. He winced immediately as if regretting the words. Sorry, I shouldn't have brought that up. It's okay, I said, waving off his concern. The business has done well, though I'll admit that expense wasn't exactly in my financial plan. Daniel hesitated, then ventured, Can I ask why you did it? Spend all that money on her wedding, especially if things were already complicated with your family? His question hit a nerve, one I'd been prodding at myself since the moment I'd agreed to foot the bill. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Honestly, I think I hoped it would change things. Like if I did this huge, selfless thing for Olivia, my family would finally see me differently. Value me differently. I let out a soft, bitter laugh, shaking my head at my own naivety. Pretty foolish looking back. Daniel's gaze softened, his voice gentle but firm. But foolish. Human. We all want to be seen and appreciated by the people we love. His words, free of pity or judgment, touched something deep inside me, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. Thank you, I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. From there, our conversation shifted to lighter ground. A tricky project he was tackling at work, a travel photography class I'd taken on a whim, our shared love for the quirky little bookstore that had somehow survived in our old college neighborhood. Time slipped away, and when I glanced at my watch, I was startled to realize nearly 2 hours had passed. I hadn't checked my phone once, a rarity for someone whose business lived and died by digital connection. I should probably get going, I said reluctantly, gathering my things. I've got a client call at 4. Daniel nodded, his expression mirroring my own hesitation. This was nice, he said simply, really nice. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. It was. As we stood to leave, a moment of awkwardness hung between us, the kind that comes at the end of a not-quite date. Was it a date? The lines felt blurry, thrilling, and unnerving all at once. I'd like to do this again, Daniel said, breaking the tension. Maybe dinner next time. A flutter stirred in my stomach, a sensation I hadn't felt in longer than I cared to admit. I'd like that, I replied, surprised by how much I meant it. Outside the cafe, we lingered on the sidewalk, neither of us quite ready to walk away. I'll call you, Daniel said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. The gesture was soft, almost tentative, but it left my skin tingling. I'll look forward to it, I said, meaning every word. As I drove home, a smile played on my lips, a lightness in my chest that had nothing to do with my family drama and everything to do with the simple joy of connecting with someone who saw me, really saw me, and liked what they found. That good mood carried me through my afternoon client call and into the evening. I was just settling onto the couch with a glass of wine and a book I'd been meaning to read for months when my phone rang. My father's number flashed on the screen, and my heart gave a small lurch. I hesitated only a moment before answering. Hi, Dad. Emma, he said, his deep voice instantly familiar, stirring a mix of comfort and unease given our recent tensions. How are you, sweetheart? The endearment, so rare from my typically stoic father, caught me off guard, and I felt a pang of something. Hope, maybe, or fear that it wouldn't last. I'm okay, I said cautiously. How about you? Been better, he admitted, his tone unusually open. The house feels too quiet with Olivia on her honeymoon. And your mother, well, she's been in a state since your talk on Sunday. I wasn't sure how to respond. Was I supposed to feel guilty that Mom was upset, or was he just stating the truth? I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. My father sighed, the sound heavy with more than just the present moment. Don't be sorry, Emma. Your mother needed that wake-up call. We both did. I nearly dropped my wine glass, shock rendering me speechless. Robert Walker, admitting fault, acknowledging a need for change. It was so far outside my experience that I couldn't process it. Emma, you still there? He asked after a long pause. I'm here, I managed, my voice shaky. Just surprised, I guess. A hint of dry humor crept into his tone. That I can admit when I've screwed up. I know I'm not the most open book, but I'm not completely blind either. I couldn't help myself. Could have fooled me, I said. Yes, he said, then cringed at my sharpness. But instead of bristling, my father chuckled, a low, rusty sound, like a door creaking open after years of disuse. I deserve that, he said. I've been complacent. It was easier to let your mother handle the emotional stuff, to go along with her choices about family matters. But that was a cop-out, and what happened at the wedding made that crystal clear. I sank deeper into the couch, my mind reeling as I tried to absorb this unprecedented openness. What are you saying, Dad? I'm saying I've been a passive father, especially as you and Olivia grew up. I let imbalances fester without stepping in. I should have noticed how you were being treated and done something about it long before it got to this point. His words hit me like a tidal wave, powerful and overwhelming. All my life, I'd craved this. My father's acknowledgement, his recognition of the disparities between how Olivia and I were treated. Now it was happening, and I found myself blinking back tears, my throat tight with emotion. Thank you for saying that, I whispered, my voice thick with everything I'd held back for so long. When I finally found the courage to speak again, my voice trembled with the weight of years unspoken. It means everything to hear you say that, I said, my heart swelling with a mix of relief and lingering ache. My father's response came slowly, each word heavy with regret. I should have told you long ago, Emma, he said, his voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. I've always been so proud of you, your strength, your ambition, the way you've carved out your own path. But I made a terrible mistake. I thought because you were so capable, so fiercely independent, you didn't need the same encouragement or attention we gave Olivia. I was wrong. His admission hung in the air, a fragile bridge between us. I felt a pang in my chest, a bittersweet recognition of the truth he'd finally voiced. Everyone needs to feel seen, Dad, I said softly, my throat tight. Even the strong ones. He sighed, a sound that carried the weight of years of missed moments. I'm starting to understand that now, he said. I'm trying to learn, Emma. I hope it's not too late. A quiet settled over us, not the strained silence of old arguments or unspoken grudges, but something softer, warmer. A stillness born of truth finally spoken and received. I could feel the shift, like a knot in my chest slowly unraveling. My father broke the silence, his voice tentative but earnest. Your mother and I have been talking a lot lately, he said, about the patterns we've fallen into, the ways we've let things slide, ways we've failed you both. It's been hard. You know how your mother is with criticism. I couldn't help but smile, a wry twist of my lips. That was putting it mildly. Patricia Walker treated criticism like a personal attack, something to dodge with the same fervor most people reserved for dodging a runaway truck. Every critique, no matter how gentle, was met with a fortress of defensiveness, as if admitting fault might unravel her entirely. But she's trying, my father added, sensing the skepticism flickering in my mind. We both are. We want to be better, Emma, for you and Olivia. Better parents, better listeners. His words washed over me like a tide, soothing wounds I'd carried so long they felt like part of my skin. I blinked back the sting of tears, my voice thick as I replied, I want that too, Dad. The simplicity of his response, good, that's good, held more weight than any grand speech could have. We talked on, slipping into the kind of everyday chatter I'd rarely shared with him. Olivia and Nathan's honeymoon plans, the new project I was pouring my heart into at work, the way the seasons were shifting, and his quiet excitement about the garden he'd plant come spring. Each word felt like a small gift, a moment of connection I hadn't realized I'd been craving. As we neared the end of the call, my father cleared his throat, a habit I knew signaled something he found hard to say. One more thing, Emma, he said, his voice softer now, almost vulnerable. Your mother and I want to pay you back for the wedding expenses. Every cent. My instinct was to protest, to wave it off as I always had. Dad, you don't have to. I gave that money willingly. I never expected. He cut me off, his tone gentle but firm. It's not about what you expected, Emma. It's about what's right. We should never have let you carry that weight alone, especially without acknowledging what it meant. Please let us do this. I could have argued, could have insisted the money didn't matter, but I saw the gesture for what it was, not just a financial repayment, but an acknowledgement of the imbalance that had defined our family for too long. It was his way of saying he saw me, saw the sacrifices I'd made. Okay, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. No, Emma, he replied, his voice catching in a way I had rarely heard. Thank you for giving us the chance to make this right. When the call ended, I sank into my reading chair, the soft glow of moonlight spilling through the window. I sat there for a long time, turning over the conversation in my mind. First Olivia, with her tearful apology after the wedding, and now my father, both confronting the cracks in our family's foundation, both daring to hope for something better. It was more than I'd allowed myself to dream of in the raw, painful days following the wedding confrontation. My mother, though, remained a question mark. She'd always been the toughest nut to crack, her pride a wall that criticism could barely dent. Yet even she had shown flickers of awareness during our tense sidewalk conversation after the wedding, moments where I saw her grappling with the truth, however reluctantly. If my father was right, if they were talking, really talking, maybe even she was starting to see the need for change, no matter how much it scared her. For the first time since the wedding, I let myself imagine a different future with my family. One where my contributions weren't just expected but valued, where my boundaries weren't tested but respected, where love wasn't a competition with winners and losers. It wouldn't happen overnight. Decades of habits don't vanish in a week of hard conversations. But the seeds were planted, and that was enough for now. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from Daniel. Had a great time today. How's Friday night for dinner? I know a place with amazing paella. A smile tugged at my lips, warmth blooming in my chest. Friday sounds perfect. I love paella, I typed back. His reply was quick. It's a date then. Looking forward to it. A date. The words sent a flutter through me, a mix of excitement and nerves that felt like a breath of fresh air after the emotional storm of the past week. As I got ready for bed, I couldn't help but marvel at the strange magic of it all. A single moment of raw, public confrontation at the wedding had set off a chain reaction, reshaping relationships I'd thought were set in stone. And in the midst of it, a chance reunion with Daniel, an old love I'd long since tucked away, had sparked something new, something I hadn't dared to hope for in years. Life was unpredictable like that. Sometimes the hardest moments cracked open the door to the growth we needed most. Sometimes the people we thought we'd lost forever found their way back when we least expected it. By Friday evening, I stood before my closet, paralyzed by indecision. What do you wear to a first date with someone who once knew you better than anyone? A dress that screamed the confident woman I'd become? Or something that echoed the carefree girl I'd been when we were college sweethearts? I muttered to myself. You're overthinking this, Emma. And finally chose a deep burgundy wrap dress. Simple, elegant, and just enough of me to feel right. As I put on my makeup, my phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Good luck tonight, no ex talk, no family drama, just enjoy the paella and the eye candy. I want all the details tomorrow. I laughed, typing back, yes, Mom, I'll be home by curfew. Her reply was instant. Don't you dare stay out late. Get some. Her humor, her unwavering support, it was a lifeline as always. When I told her about my coffee date with Daniel and his dinner invitation, she'd practically crowed with delight, declaring it the universe finally throwing me a bone. The restaurant Daniel picked was a cozy Spanish spot in Ballard, all warm wood and flickering candlelight, the air rich with the scent of saffron and seafood. The host led us to a quiet corner table, perfect for talking without shouting over the hum of the crowd. This place is beautiful, I said as we settled in, taking in the rustic charm. How'd you find it? One of my clients designed the renovation, Daniel explained, his smile easy. He dragged me here when it was done, and I've been hooked ever since. The server brought menus and a bottle of Rioja, and soon we were sharing tapas, patatas bravas, gambas al ajillo, while waiting for the paella Danielle couldn't stop raving about. The conversation flowed as effortlessly as it had at the cafe, but there was a new energy now, a quiet thrill in every glance, every accidental brush of fingers. I have a confession, Daniel said, his eyes glinting as he leaned in. I checked out your company website after our coffee date, Walker Digital. It's seriously impressive. I felt a flush of pride, warmed by his interest. Thanks. It's been a journey, turning a side hustle into a real agency. The testimonials are glowing, he said, a teasing edge to his voice, especially that one from Harbor View Brewery. What was it? Emma Walker doesn't just get digital marketing, she gets people. That's what makes her exceptional. I laughed, half embarrassed, half flattered that Hannah he'd memorized the quote. They were a little drunk when they wrote that, if I'm honest. We just launched their online store and sales went through the roof. Drunk or not, they nailed it, Daniel said, his gaze warm and steady. You always had a way of understanding people. It's one of the things I always admired about you. The words hit me like a soft punch, stirring memories I'd buried long ago. I ducked my head, focusing on the paella, letting the warmth of the moment settle over me. The night stretched on, full of laughter and possibility, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The compliment landed like a soft, unexpected breeze, stirring something deep within me. You've always had this incredible ability to see right through people, Daniel said, his voice carrying a sincerity that felt like a warm embrace, impossible to brush off as mere politeness. It's like you can peel back their masks and understand what they truly need, even when they're stumbling over their own words, lost in their own chaos. I'm not surprised at all that you've turned that gift into a thriving business. My cheeks flushed, a gentle heat rising as I absorbed his words. Praise so direct, so unguarded, was unfamiliar territory, and it left me momentarily disarmed, my usual defenses softened by the weight of his admiration. Thank you, I managed, my voice quieter than I intended, laced with a gratitude that felt almost too big for the moment. That means more than you know. Daniel's smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds, warm and unguarded, and when he reached across the table to brush his fingers lightly against mine, the brief contact sent a shiver of connection through me. It was a fleeting touch, but it carried the weight of this shared history and unspoken possibilities. I shifted the focus, eager to redirect the intensity of the moment. And you, I said, leaning forward slightly, sustainable architecture? It's like the universe custom-built that path for you. I can still hear you in college, ranting about the wastefulness of traditional construction, your hands flailing as you made your case. Yeah. My teasing was gentle, affectionate, and Daniel laughed, the sound rich and familiar, accepting my deflection with the same grace he'd always had. Some things never change, I suppose, he said, his eyes crinkling with amusement. Though I like to think my rants are a bit more polished now. Maybe even convincing enough to get clients to see the value in greener options. His humility was endearing, but I could sense the confidence beneath it, the kind that comes from years of honing a craft you love. I'd bet they're very persuasive, I said, my mind drifting back to the Daniel I'd known in college, the one who could light up a room with his passion for ideas he believed in. You always had this way of opening people's eyes, making them see possibilities they hadn't even considered. The memory of his fervor, his ability to inspire, felt vivid, like a snapshot I'd carried with me all these years. Just then, the paella arrived, a vibrant masterpiece that seemed to glow under the restaurant's warm lighting. The saffron-infused rice was a canvas of golden hues, dotted with plump shrimp, tender chicken, and smoky chorizo, the edges kissed with the coveted socarat, that crisp, caramelized layer that promised a burst of flavor. The steam rising from the dish carried an intoxicating aroma, rich and earthy with hints of the sea. "Oh my God," I whispered, my senses overwhelmed by the sight and scent. "This looks incredible." Daniel's eyes sparkled with delight at my reaction. "Wait until you taste it," he said, his voice brimming with anticipation. "The chef uses his grandmother's recipe, straight from Valencia. It's the real deal." I took my first bite, and it was like a small revelation, a symphony of flavors dancing across my tongue. The rice held its texture, each grain distinct yet infused with the deep, savory broth. The seafood was sweet and delicate, the chorizo adding a smoky depth that tied it all together. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wash over me, savoring not just the food, but the warmth of sharing it with someone who understood its significance. "Good?" Daniel asked, though the bliss on my face must have answered before I could. "Incredible," I confirmed, opening my eyes to meet his. "Thank you for bringing me here." The gratitude in my voice was real, layered with an appreciation for more than just the meal, for the thoughtfulness behind his choice, for the way he'd always known how to make a moment feel special. As we ate, our conversation drifted to the past, to the shared memories that tethered us to our college days. We laughed over the absurd experimental theater production we'd stumbled into, where the actors wore paper bags over their heads, their voices muffled but oddly profound. We recounted the disastrous road trip to Portland, when a wrong turn left us stranded in a creepy motel that felt like it belonged in a horror flick, complete with flickering neon signs and questionable stains on the carpet. And those late-night study sessions, when we'd start out diligently reviewing notes, but end up tangled in passionate debates about life, love, and the meaning of it all, topics far removed from our actual coursework. "Do you remember Professor Caldwell's ethics class?" Daniel asked, his grin mischievous as he leaned back in his chair. "The day you absolutely eviscerated that guy's argument about ethical egoism?" I groaned, covering my face with my hands, a mix of embarrassment and amusement bubbling up. Oh God, I was so insufferable back then. Poor Brad didn't know what hit him. Poor Brad was a smug jerk who needed a reality check, Daniel countered, his tone playful but firm. And you delivered it with surgical precision. I swear, I think I fell a little in love with you that day. The words hung between us, a sudden shift from lighthearted nostalgia to something deeper, more vulnerable. My breath caught, and for a moment the restaurant's hum faded into the background. Daniel's eyes held mine, steady and unguarded, and I felt the weight of his admission settle into the space between us, electric and fragile. "When did you know?" I asked, my voice soft, curiosity nudging me past my hesitation. "That you had feelings for me, I mean." Daniel paused, his expression thoughtful, as if sifting through years of memories to pinpoint the exact moment. "It wasn't just one thing," he said slowly, his voice measured but warm. "It was a slow build, a collection of moments that added up over time. But if I had to choose..." He trailed off, his gaze distant, then refocused on me. "Do you remember that night at the lighthouse?" The memory flooded back, vivid and immediate. It was finals week, and our study group had been fraying at the edges, restless and overwhelmed. On a whim, we'd piled into a car and driven to the lighthouse at Discovery Park, seeking a reprieve from the grind. One by one, our friends had trickled back to campus, leaving just Daniel and me sitting on a weathered driftwood log, the Pacific stretching out before us. The sky had deepened from twilight to a star-strewn night, and we'd talk for hours, our words weaving a cocoon around us. "You were telling me about constellations," Daniel continued, his voice softening with the memory. "How your grandfather taught you to navigate by the stars when you were a kid. You were so alive, pointing out patterns in the sky I could barely make out, even when you tried to guide my eyes with your hands. Your passion, your light. It was magnetic. I remember thinking I could listen to her talk about anything forever." His words landed softly, each one carrying a quiet certainty that stirred something deep within me. I felt exposed, but not in a way that made me want to retreat, more like I was being truly seen for the first time in years. "I didn't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, laced with a mix of regret and wonder. "How could you?" Daniel replied, his smile gentle, absolving. "I barely understood it myself back then. But looking back, that was the moment I started seeing you differently, when I realized what I felt was more than just friendship." I smiled, warmth spreading through me, not just from the memory, but from the way he'd held on to it, the way he'd carried it all these years. "For me, I said, my voice steadier now, "it was the soup." Daniel's brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Soup?" I laughed, the sound lightening the moment. "Junior year, when I had that awful flu, I missed a week of classes, and you showed up every day with homemade chicken soup. Not just soup, though, tea, those terrible action movies you knew I secretly loved, and notes from the class I was missing. No one had ever taken care of me like that before." Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a soft chuckle. "I remember now. You were the worst patient, trying to drag yourself out of bed to work on assignments when you could barely stand. And you kept pushing me back into bed and hiding my laptop," I said, laughing at the memory, though my chest tightened with the weight of what it had meant to me. "I was so annoyed with you at the time. But that's when it hit me, when I realized someone could care about me without expecting anything in return. That's a rare thing, especially when you've grown up feeling like your worth is tied to what you can do for others. Daniel's expression softened, a shadow of understanding crossing his face. Like with your family, he said quietly, and I nodded, grateful that he'd made the connection without me having to spell it out. Growing up, I'd always been the one to hold things together, to meet expectations, to be the dependable one. But with Daniel, I'd felt valued for who I was, not what I could provide. He reached across the table again, his hand finding mine, his touch steady and warm. I still do, he said simply, his voice carrying a quiet conviction that made my heart stutter. Care about you, I mean. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing a single step could change everything. My mind raced, caught between the comfort of the familiar and the exhilarating unknown. For a fleeting second, I could feel the trajectory of my life teetering, as if the next few breaths might set a new course. Then Daniel smiled, a gentle, grounding curve of his lips that eased the intensity without breaking the connection. How about dessert? He asked, his tone light but deliberate. The crema catalana here is almost as good as the paella. I smiled back, grateful for his ability to sense when to press forward and when to pull back. I could be persuaded, I said, my voice teasing, especially if it involves caramelized sugar. The dessert arrived, a perfect crema catalana with a glossy amber crust that cracked satisfyingly under the tap of my spoon, revealing a creamy custard beneath. As we shared it, I found myself studying Daniel, noting the ways time had shaped him. The laugh lines around his eyes were new, etched by years of joy and experience, and there was a quiet confidence in his posture that hadn't been there in college. But his eyes still crinkled when he smiled, and he still ran his hand through his hair when lost in thought, a gesture so familiar it felt like home. What? He asked, catching my gaze, a playful challenge in his tone. Just taking inventory, I said honestly, my voice soft but steady, noticing what's changed and what's stayed the same. And what's the verdict? He asked, a hint of vulnerability flickering in his eyes, as if my answer mattered more than he wanted to admit. I paused, choosing my words carefully, wanting them to carry the weight of what I felt. I think the core of you is still there, the essential Danielness of you. But there are new layers, depths I'm only starting to uncover. It's like picking up a favorite book years later and finding new meanings you missed the first time around. His expression softened, a quiet joy lighting his features. That's a beautiful way to put it, he said. I feel the same about you. The Emma I knew is still there, but there's so much more now. I want to learn all those new parts of you, to see who you've become. His words sent a warmth spreading through me, like a fire kindling in my chest. I'd like that, I said softly, the admission feeling like a promise, a willingness to step into the unknown together. As Daniel paid the bill, brushing off my offer to split it with a casual, "You can get the next one," my heart fluttered at the implication of future moments like this. I marveled at the unexpected turns life could take. Just a week ago, I'd been bracing myself for my sister's wedding, dreading the familiar sting of being overlooked, of fading into the background as I always did at family gatherings. I never could have imagined that choosing to step away from those patterns would lead me here, to this restaurant, to this moment with Daniel Harrison. Outside, the October night was crisp but not biting, the sky clear enough to reveal a scattering of stubborn stars despite the city's glow. "Can I walk you to your car?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying that same gentle chivalry I'd always admired. "I'd like that," I said, slipping my hand into his when he offered it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and steady, and as we strolled down the brick-paved street, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. Whatever lay ahead, this moment, this connection, was a beginning, one I hadn't seen coming but was ready to embrace. As we strolled through Ballard's rain-dampened streets, the cool evening air seemed to carry the tentative hope blossoming between us. Neither Daniel nor I were eager to end the night, our steps leisurely, as if each moment was a treasure to be savored. Our conversation had shifted to lighter topics, an art museum exhibit we both yearned to visit, a book we'd both recently lost ourselves in, and the festive plans for the approaching holiday season. Every word felt like a delicate thread, weaving a shared vision of connection and possibility. When we reached my car, parked under the soft glow of a street lamp, Daniel turned to me, his hand still gently holding mine. The warmth of his touch steadied the nervous flutter in my chest. "I had a wonderful time tonight, Emma," he said, his voice rich with sincerity that warmed my heart. "So did I replied, the words carrying a depth I hadn't expected. For a moment we stood there, gazes locked, the air between us alive with unspoken potential, like the quiet before a storm. Then, with a tenderness that stole my breath, Daniel leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand, as if he were asking permission to cross an invisible threshold. When I leaned into him, my free hand resting against the steady beat of his heart, the kiss deepened, becoming something certain, alive with promise. It was both a homecoming and the start of something new, a moment that held the weight of both past and future. When we parted, slightly breathless, Daniel pressed his forehead to mine, his warmth grounding me in the chilly night. "I've been wanting to do that since I saw you at the wedding," he admitted, his voice a low, intimate confession. I teased, a playful smile curving my lips. "Even during my public meltdown?" His soft laugh resonated through me, warm and reassuring. "Especially then," he said, his eyes shining with admiration. "You were magnificent, Emma. Standing up for yourself like that, it was breathtaking, incredibly attractive." His words enveloped me, soothing old wounds I hadn't realized still ached. I grinned, emboldened. In that case, maybe I should make a habit of confronting my family at formal events. Daniel's thumb traced gentle circles on my hand, his smile both mischievous and tender. "Or," he offered, "we could just go on more dates, less drama, just as rewarding." I laughed, the sound light and free. "I like that plan," I said, leaning in for another kiss, brief but filled with promise. "It's a date." Driving home, the taste of his kiss lingered, a quiet reminder of the night's magic. A steady joy settled in my chest, not the fleeting thrill of grand gestures, but the kind that comes from glimpsing possibilities unfolding, like petals catching dawn's first light. The past week had been a grueling trek through the tangled landscape of my past, confronting ingrained patterns and demanding respect I too often withheld from myself. But it had led me here to this unexpected crossroads of new beginnings, with my family, with Daniel, and most importantly, with myself. For the first time in my adult life, I felt anchored in my own worth, not defined by what I could do for others, but valued simply as Emma. It was a powerful realization, both grounding and liberating, like standing firm on a mountain peak after a long climb. When I pulled into my driveway, my phone lit up with a text from Daniel. "Made it home safe, but already missing you. When can I see you again?" Smiling, I typed back, "Soon, very soon." And for once, I let myself believe that joy could be that simple, that happiness didn't always have to be hard-won. 3 months later, Seattle had traded autumn's golden glow for winter's silvery chill. The holiday season was in full swing, streets adorned with twinkling lights that shimmered in the puddles left by December's relentless rain. In my kitchen, I stood at the counter, carefully arranging homemade gingerbread cookies on a platter, my eyes darting to the clock with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Daniel appeared in the doorway, 2 wrapped gifts in hand, his green sweater perfectly complementing the warmth in his eyes. He'd spent the night, a habit that had become a cherished routine, and looked effortlessly handsome, his presence a quiet comfort. "Need any help?" he asked, his tone playful yet kind. "Just moral support," I replied, half joking, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the cookies. "Are you sure you want to do this? It's not too late to fake food poisoning and spend the day with Christmas movies." He set the gifts down and crossed the room, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. His embrace was an anchor in my storm of nerves. "And miss your first official Walker family holiday brunch as the woman who refuses to sit in kitchens?" "Not a chance," I leaned into him, gratitude washing over me. "Fair warning," I said, "my mother spent 20 minutes on the phone yesterday obsessing over place settings. I think she's trying to make amends." Daniel kissed my shoulder, his voice light but certain. "Sounds like progress to me. One neurotic place setting at a time." He was right. The past 3 months had been a delicate balance of small triumphs and occasional missteps as my family and I navigated new dynamics. My parents had repaid the money I'd spent on Olivia's wedding, a gesture I'd turned into a college fund for future nieces or nephews, a quiet investment in a future I was beginning to trust. My father had become unexpectedly vocal about ensuring fairness between his daughters, his efforts sometimes awkward but always earnest. My mother, though still wrestling with old habits, was making genuine attempts to see me as I was, not as the daughter she'd always imagined. And Olivia, my sister, had surprised me most. Since her honeymoon, she'd worked to rebuild our bond, calling just to talk, showing interest in my work, even defending me during a minor clash with our mother over Thanksgiving plans. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, a fragile bridge spanning years of misunderstanding. I turned to Daniel, the cookies finally arranged. You know, I said softly, a year ago, I'd have never hosted a family gathering here. I'd have been too consumed with perfection, meeting everyone's expectations, terrified of falling short. Daniel tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch sending a familiar flutter through me. And now, he asked, his eyes searching mine. Now, I said, smiling, I know they're lucky to be invited, and my worth doesn't depend on whether the cranberry sauce meets my mother's standards. He laughed, pulling me into a warm embrace. That's my girl, he said, pride in his voice. Speaking of which, when do you want to share our news? My hand drifted to the silver bracelet on my wrist, his gift to mark our decision to move in together after the new year. A commitment, a promise of more to come. Let's wait until after dessert, I suggested, nerves mingling with excitement. Give everyone time to settle in. The doorbell rang, signaling the first guests. Daniel squeezed my hand before heading to answer it. Emma! Megan's voice echoed from the entryway, bright and familiar. I brought mimosa supplies as requested. Oh, hey there, handsome. Looking cozy today. I smiled, listening to their easy banter as they approached the kitchen. Including Megan, my chosen family, in today's gathering was a non-negotiable boundary in this new chapter. Family celebrations would include those who'd earned their place in my heart, not just those tied by blood. Nice spread, Megan said, eyeing the brunch. Though I noticed we're eating in the dining room, not the kitchen. Pointed choice, I winked. Subtle, right? She grinned. About as subtle as a sledgehammer. I love it. The doorbell rang again, announcing my parents, followed by Olivia and Nathan. Hugs were exchanged, compliments flowed over the decorations, and there was a slight awkwardness as we navigated this new dynamic. My mother handed me a poinsettia and a bottle of wine, her eyes scanning the room with her familiar, critical gaze. But instead of critiques, she said, "Everything looks lovely, Emma. Thank you for hosting us." It was a small gesture, but its simplicity carried weight, an acknowledgement without conditions. As I led everyone to the dining room, Olivia gave me a quick thumbs up behind our mother's back, a silent nod of solidarity. Progress indeed. The meal unfolded in a warm blur of conversation and laughter. My father entertained with tales of his gardening mishaps. Nathan and Daniel bonded over obscure sci-fi films, and Megan charmed everyone with classroom stories. I sat at the head of my table, in my home, surrounded by people beginning to see me, really see me, for the first time. When dessert was served, plates scattered with gingerbread crumbs and whipped cream, Daniel caught my eye, one eyebrow raised in question. I nodded, heart racing with nerves and excitement. Actually, Daniel began, taking my hand, Emma and I have a bit of news to share. All eyes turned to us, my mother's hope barely concealed, Megan's smirk knowing. We've decided to move in together after the new year, I announced, squeezing Daniel's hand, my voice steady despite the butterflies. The air in the dining room carried the warm, lingering scent of roasted turkey and spiced cider, but beneath it, a subtle tension flickered as I broke the news. Daniel was giving up his apartment to move in with me. My mother's face froze for a heartbeat, her eyes widening with a flash of surprise that she quickly tried to mask. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, a fleeting hope for a different announcement. Perhaps a ring, a wedding date, dissolving into a quiet, carefully veiled disappointment. She pressed her lips into a tight smile, her hands smoothing the napkin in her lap as if to steady herself. That's wonderful, dear, she said, her voice bright but tinged with an undercurrent of restraint, as though she were convincing herself as much as me. My father, ever the anchor, caught the shift in her expression. His eyes flicked to her with a look that was both gentle and firm, a silent reminder to embrace the moment. He raised his glass, the crystal catching the soft glow of the chandelier. "To new beginnings," he declared, his tone resolute, carrying the weight of someone who'd learned to value happiness when it appeared, no matter the form it took, and to having the good sense to recognize it when it's standing right in front of you. The table echoed his toast, glasses clinking in a chorus of agreement, the sound bright and hopeful, like a promise sealed in the moment. I felt a warmth spread through me, not just from the wine, but from the realization that this step, Daniel moving in, meant something bigger than logistics. It was a bridge to a future we were building together, and my family, in their own way, was trying to meet us halfway. Later, after the flurry of holiday chaos had settled, the plates stacked, gifts unwrapped, and farewells exchanged with hugs that lingered just a little longer than usual, Daniel and I found ourselves in the quiet of my small kitchen. The space felt intimate, almost sacred, as we worked side by side, cleaning up the remnants of the day. The clatter of dishes and the soft hum of the dishwasher filled the silence, but it was a comfortable quiet, the kind that comes from knowing someone so well you don't need words to feel connected. Daniel rinsed a large serving platter under the faucet, his movements steady and deliberate. "That went well," he said, glancing at me with a half smile. "Your mom only had that pinched look for, what, 5 seconds when we told them? That's progress." I laughed, the sound bubbling up from a place of relief and affection. Bumping his hip with mine as I reached for the dish soap, I said, "New record. She'll come around, you know. She likes you. Dad does too." It was true, but saying it out loud felt like an acknowledgement of something fragile and precious, a tentative bridge being built between my family and the life I was creating with Daniel. My mother's approval had always been a hard-won thing, layered with expectations I could never quite meet. But today I had seen a flicker of something new in her, a willingness to try, even if it was imperfect. Daniel paused, his hand still under the running water, and looked at me with that quiet intensity that always caught me off guard. "I like them too, Emma," he said, his voice soft but earnest. "They're trying. It's not perfect, but they're really trying." His words hit me like a gentle wave, washing over the raw edges of old wounds. I thought of the years spent yearning for my parents to see me, not as the daughter who fell short of their vision, but as someone whole with dreams and choices of her own. "I know," I said quietly, my voice catching just a little. "That's all I ever wanted. Not perfection, just effort, recognition." Daniel nodded, his understanding as steady as ever. He set the platter in the dishwasher and turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. "You got more than that today," he said. "Did you notice how your mom actually asked for your opinion on her garden plans? Not Olivia's, yours." He was right, I had noticed, though I hadn't let myself dwell on it until now. My mother, who usually deferred to my sister's impeccable taste, had turned to me with a question about her prized roses, her tone hesitant but genuine. And my father, he'd made a point of asking about the campaign launch for my biggest client, a project I'd only mentioned in passing during our last call. He'd remembered, and more than that, he cared enough to bring it up, to show me he was listening. These were small gestures, but they carried weight, like stones carefully placed to build a path forward. I handed Daniel the last plate to rinse, my fingers brushing against his. "It's strange," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A few months ago, I was so hurt, so angry, I was ready to walk away from them for good. I thought I'd never feel like I belonged in this family. And now, here we are, hosting holiday brunches, making plans, talking about the future like it's something we all want to share." The words felt heavy with the truth of how far we'd come, how much had shifted in such a short time. Daniel dried his hands on a towel, his expression thoughtful as he leaned against the counter. "That's the thing about family," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen his own share of fractures and repairs. "The real kind, not just the ones you are tied to by blood. It can bend, stretch, even break for a while. But if there's real love, real effort from everyone, it can heal. Sometimes it comes back stronger, better than before." His words settled into me, filling the cracks left by years of feeling like I was on the outside looking in. Daniel had a way of seeing the world that made even the messiest parts feel fixable, like a blueprint for something sturdy and lasting. I dried my hands and turned to him, struck again by how this man, this unexpected gift of a second chance, always seemed to know exactly what I needed to hear. My heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and wonder, the kind that makes you pause and marvel at how life can surprise you. "You're pretty push for an architect," I teased, stepping closer and sliding my arms around his waist. His warmth grounded me, a reminder that we were in this together. He grinned, that familiar crinkle around his eyes making my pulse skip, even after all this time. "It's all the blueprints," he said with mock seriousness, his hands resting lightly on my hips. "They teach you about structural integrity, about knowing when a foundation needs a little reinforcement or a complete renovation." "Is that what we're doing?" I asked, tilting my head to look up at him, my voice soft but curious. "Renovating our family structures?" His smile deepened, warm and steady, like a hearth fire on a winter night. "Something like that," he said. "But unlike most renovations, this one's running ahead of schedule and under budget." "A Christmas miracle," I declared, rising on my tiptoes to kiss him. His lips met mine, soft and familiar. And for a moment, the world outside the kitchen faded. The winter light dimming through the window, the distant hum of the city settling into silence. As we stood there, wrapped in each other, I thought about the wedding that had once felt like a disaster, a painful unraveling of everything I thought I wanted. But now I saw it for what it was, the foundation of something far more valuable. It had forced me to rebuild, to find my worth not in what I could offer others, but in who I was. It had given me the courage to claim my place, not just in the kitchen cleaning up after the feast, but at the table where I belonged. Sometimes I realized you have to flip the table entirely to demand your seat, and sometimes when the dust settles, you find yourself exactly where you were always meant to be, surrounded by love, effort, and the quiet promise of new beginnings.